Good evening. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at 6 p.m. Brian, do you mind calling the roll?
Sure. Mr. Schulman,
Here.
Ms. Lankowski,
Here.
Mr. Hubers,
Here.
Ms. Langalis,
Here.
Mr. Jones,
Here.
Ms. Tabashnik,
Here.
and Mr. Bryce.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. First, I just want to take a moment. Since our last meeting, one of our commissioners has resigned, Richard Arena. And I want to take a moment to thank him for his 10 years of service, both to the commission and to the city. With that, we have some vacancies tonight, and so both Anna and Diana are seated for the duration of tonight's meeting. I'd also like to propose, based on the public comment that we're seeing, that we take a break at 8 p.m. tonight, and then after that we can evaluate what remains on the agenda and continue where we left off. Further, I'm noticing that Galen's not here. I have to recuse myself from the 97 Rowayton application. Lou, do you mind taking that one while I turn off my camera?
No, not at all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So with that, we will move to our first application, and that is 2026-33, an 824 referral, City of Norwalk, 824 referral to renovate and expand the Westport Ave Fire Station. Report and recommended action. Who here is representing that application?
Good
Hey,
evening.
good evening. Yeah, please go ahead, Attorney Loeb.
Hi, I'm Alan Loeb, city's building and facility director. Excuse me. I'm generally speaking responsible for all major building construction in the city, as well as including schools and municipal buildings, for those that don't know me. And also I'm responsible for building management and acquisition and disposition of city property. So tonight I'm joined with Mark Conti at Fire Department. Brian, if you see his name come up, if you can just have him join the meeting.
I'm here, Alan.
He's going to do the presentation. There you go.
I'm here.
So I want to do a very quick introduction regarding the project. The project basically, it's the city funded $4 million for the renovation expansion of the Westport Avenue Fire Station. The building is, I think, 1967. That's when it's built. And we haven't, generally speaking, not meant as a criticism or anything, but generally speaking, we haven't done too much to the building through all these years. And a couple of years ago, there's the City Common Council has a number of concerns about the condition of the building and the need to upgrade the building, as well as maintain a service level for that part of the northeast portion of Norwalk. So without further comment, I think Mark, if you don't mind, you may introduce a little bit of history of this project and then the needs in the community, as well as the project scope, what this project involved, and what are the plans. I think, Brian, on my memo to the commission, there's attachment to it. If you don't mind uploading it, if you could, there's 4 plans in there. The elevation is kind of a little bit. I mean, it's just graphic thing. It's not really like a presentation rendering, but it doesn't do much justice to the building. But it is what it is. But Mark, go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Briefly before you begin, I just want to note for the record that both JJ and Galen have joined us, but please go ahead and continue with your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Good evening, committee members. So, like Alan said, the building was built in 1967. This is our Station 4. For all that you know, this is our Station 4 district, which is station on Westport Avenue, and that covers from Westport Avenue all the way up to Cranberry, all the way up to Westport Line, Wilton Line, and parts. This district is our largest district, I should say, and our second busiest fire district in Norwalk. It responded to over 1,800 calls last year, and that this district has it accounts for about 20-something percent of our calls, and it has one engine company in it, which has one officer and 3 firefighters. What we've been trying to do is relocate our companies as the city has grown to better suit the community. And one of the major, I would say, our major concern has been Station 4's district, as it has gotten a lot busier throughout the years. So what we have proposed to do is take our ladder company from Station 1, which is New Canaan Avenue Station, and relocate it to Station 4. We will then relocate our rescue company from Connecticut Avenue Station 2 to Station 1. And that will provide 8 firefighters at 2 officers and 6 firefighters at Station 1 and at Station 4. Those are those are about even as far as district. They're in 20%. As far as the call volume, so that would even it out. Station 4 being so large, and it is actually the furthest away from any other station. What we have is our issue is any second arriving company is typically between 2 to 5 minutes away. In some cases at the border, it could be up to 7 minutes away. Obviously, in the event of a fire, that's a lot of time. So what we're trying to do is even out this and have that help. So you're arriving with 8 firefighters rather than 4. And needless to say, in order to do this, we're going to have to renovate the station because station was built in '67 and it's a smaller station. So it's roughly a 30 by 55 foot addition off the back of the building, which will allow us to provide obviously adequate space, living space, and an additional office for the officer. And with the improvements, we're able to remediate any hazardous materials that were built into the building back then. And we'll also be able to provide private bathroom, shower, changing facilities for all of our firefighters. And it will also provide ADA access for the building as well. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right. Hearing none, do you guys have anything else you'd like to add?
Not particularly. I think we have some plans in this, so if you're ever interested, you can look at the backup material. I know this is going to be a long meeting for you guys, so I don't want to hold you guys up more than necessary. So I want to stop.
All right. Is there a motion for this application?
So moved.
That's a move to approve, right?
Yes.
And a second from Tammy. Is there any discussion on this item? All right. I think we can do this one with a show of hands. All those in favor?
Aye.
I can't. I agree.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't be on camera right now.
Okay. Yep. Anna.
I'm so sorry. Yes.
Okay. Great. So that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Thank you, Mark.
Our next item is 2026-34, another 824 referral, City of Norwalk, 824 referral to provide a utility easement to Eversource in order for Eversource to provide primary electrical power and the installation of electrical equipment and transformer on the Narragansett School property. Report and recommended action. Mr. Lowe, are you representing this one as well?
Yes.
Please.
It's me again. So the City of Norwalk received a grant from the state. The city applied for 6 HVAC heating ventilation project, mostly for air conditioning of these schools that never had air conditioning. Some of them don't have air conditioning before. So it is part of the objective of the city to improve the air quality of these school buildings. And I think about 2 years ago, we submitted a grant. There's a special grant the state put up, and we were lucky enough that we submitted 6 projects, and we actually got all 6 of them approved. So we are entitled to get with this special legislation that was approved a couple of years ago. We are eligible for 60% reimbursement on this money, which is very good because traditionally we get 22 to 32%, depending on the type of project it is. So at 60% is a significant increase to what we would typically get reimbursement from the state for these projects. I don't have the exact dollar amount of this Narragansett School project. It's probably around $6 to $8 million. So as part of this project, we are actually in the middle of doing this project. We are scheduled to complete by the end of the summer. Part of it is that we are putting air conditioning in for most of the building. And then at the same time, air conditioning is more than just air conditioning because we have to upgrade electrical, switching gears and everything else in between. So as part of that, we need a new transformer. We need to bring a new primary line in. And Eversource has puts forth new requirements that when they do that and provide primary power to a building and the transformer within city, with any property, they require us to execute an easement. And based on state statute, our law department position is that we actually have a public hearing, and now we're referring to Planning and Zoning Commission so that the proposed easement would get approval through the city local process because it's a condition we put onto the property, and that's why we require it. So it's somewhat straightforward. It's we need electrical power, and we need a transformer. We need primary service, and Eversource required this. So again, it's pretty straightforward in terms of the needs. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Are there any questions? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion for this application? Thank you. Harvey's that a motion to approve? Great. Is there a second? All right. I think I saw Tammy first. I think we can do this with a show of hands based on that. All those in favor? Wonderful. JJ, how do you vote? We can't hear you. All right. Due to not being able to hear her.
Yes.
Oh, go
Yes.
ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, great. That
Yes.
passes unanimously. Wonderful. So next application is another 2020 or sorry, another 824 referrals, 2026-35 referral for the City of Norwalk. 824 referral to provide a utility easement to Eversource in order for Eversource to provide primary electrical power and the installation of electrical equipment and transformer on the Rowayton School property. Report and recommended action. Attorney Lowe, are you recommend?
Yeah, I'm the lucky guy again.
Great.
Just make it
Please.
short, even shorter. Did of what I've said that before. This is for Rowayton School. The same situation. We need a new transformer, new primary service coming in the building, and Eversource required this in order to get power to the building. So it's pretty straightforward in that perspective. Thank you.
Of course. Any questions?
Yes.
Please.
Mr. Lowe, was this work already done because they were digging up the front of the school a week or so ago?
There's two parts to this. One is that the city, had to put the primary line into the ground and the transformer pad. So we are doing that work right now. So it had nothing to do with the easement itself. We are actually putting the conduit as part of our construction project. Eversource will not pull the primary line and the transformer and deliver the transformer until we have the easements implemented. So the work associated with easement, in terms of the Eversource responsibility, they have not done anything yet. The work is being done is actually by our contractor and the city's contract to get the infrastructure in so that Eversource in the future, when we approve these easement, then they will do the work.
I see. And thank you. And who selects the location for where that sort of pre-work is located?
Eversource does. They dictate where they want to come in the property. It's a combination, mostly them, a little bit of us, because we need to make sure that somehow you get into the building on the side of the building where it's the most appropriate, depends on the interior layout of the building, where our electrical closets are and stuff like that. So internally it's us, and then externally it's Eversource, because they want to come in certain directions, location, because they could be because where the utility poles are, or where the grading works best for them, kind of thing. So a combination of both sides, but mostly it's Eversource when you talk about outside the building, because they have a very particular requirements. And for us, it's like, it's a little bit of working together to come up with it, but mostly them.
Okay, thank you. I will say that the front of that school is reasonably attractive with a pretty path. And now you have these yellow, I guess they're made out of cement bollards. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but there are a whole bunch of them. And it's just sort of too bad that they've kind of ruined the aesthetic of the front of the school. So if there are more projects like that in the future, if you can ask Eversource to, take into account how attractive you want the front of the school to look, I think that would be nice.
Understood. I would have to say that Eversource is not very easy to deal with.
I'm sure. I
In
know
fact,
you
the
have to be
requirements that they
expected to
put in on
diplomat.
these easement, it's in a way it's not reasonable. It's some of the things that we have to deal with.
Yes.
But at the same time, they are a utility company. It's they have their own bureaucracy that they had to go through and all. But again, I understood what you're saying. Because certain area we want to put trees in, they won't allow us to put trees in this easement area, and on and on and on and on. So it's a struggle for us to negotiate these easement with them. So
I appreciate it, and I feel your pain, and I'm sorry, but if we just keep reminding them, maybe 1 out of the 12 projects, they'll make it look nice.
I mean, I can say that we could try to cover with trees, but they won't even let us put trees within 20 feet of these easement areas. So it's a bit painful. Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Understood.
Thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions? All right. Is there a motion for this application?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Is that to approve?
Yes.
Great. And Anna, I saw seconded. All right. And so with that, any discussion? All right. Let's do this one by show of hands as well. All those in favor? All right. JJ?
Yes.
Great. It carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So the next item on our agenda is 2026-30, our 216 East Avenue exterior modifications within EVTZ peer review authorization. Brian, are you talking through that one, or is someone here with that application?
There's the Daniel Glissman, who's representing 216 East Ave, is here too, but I'm not sure if he'll need to speak. If you want to have any questions for him, you're more than welcome to ask. But this is just a architectural peer review for a proposed redesign of the gas station at 216 East Ave, and I can pull up quick drawing to show what exists versus what's proposed. And the reason for the request is that it is in the EVTZ. Really, any architectural or facade changes to structures trigger the requirement for design review. So this is before you to get that process underway.
And Brian, who's been selected to do the review?
I'm not sure. Likely BFJ. Steve had reached out to them.
Mr. Glissman,
What
did you have
different
anything?
designs could they have for a gas station?
What was the first part of your question? Sorry, I was talking over you, Galen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just asking what different design would they have for a gas station? Like the color of the little roof?
Yeah, so this one is probably a little bit more substantial than, just changing, some of the logos. So they're doing a redesign of the right now it's a service center. I don't think the service center is proposed to continue. It's going to be more of like a retail convenience store use instead of the service center. Mr. Glissman, please feel free to correct me if anything I say is incorrect, but I believe that's what the proposal is.
Hello, everybody. Brian, thank you for the intro there. And no, you got it spot on. I apologize for the informal background here. I wasn't sure if I was going to be needed tonight, but great to meet everyone. And no, you got it right on, Brian. This is what we think is a really significant improvement to the site. It's currently operating as a gas station and service station, and it will be modified to, refresh the facade of the existing building and turn that into a retail use, and then obviously upgrade the canopy and the rest of the space to fit with the design of our applicant, our client. So we're excited for it and look forward to the peer review. Thank you all.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this application? Or this referral authorization?
What exactly are we voting on? I mean, there's the one-page thing in those photos, but there's nothing else.
Just to authorize the peer review.
Okay, fine.
I misspoke a moment ago. Yeah, it's just the authorization. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions or comments on this? All right, is there a motion to authorize? Go ahead.
I'll move to authorize the hiring of a peer reviewer.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Harvey. Any discussion? All right, I think we can do this again with the show of hands. All those in favor? All right, JJ?
Yes.
Wonderful, that carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
For this next item, I need to recuse myself, so I will pass it over to Galen to handle 97 Rowan Avenue. Galen, do you mind taking that one over?
No, that's fine.
Great, thank you.
Okay, the next one is 2026-19 CSPR, Bluefish Partners LLC, 97 Rowayton Avenue. After the fact approval of an existing shoreline flood and erosion control structure. Report and recommended action. Who is representing Bluefish Partners LLC?
That's me tonight, Emma Dignati of Wofsy Rosen. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So, good evening, everyone. My colleague Adam Blank is attending another land use hearing, and he may join via Zoom if the timing allows tonight. Unfortunately, our engineers could not be on tonight, but I can hopefully cover the plans with you without them. At least Henry Conroy, one of the clients, and possibly also Kevin Conroy are also on the Zoom, and they'll be available to answer any questions you may have. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right. So this CAM application is submitted for property located at 97 Rowayton Avenue by the owner, Bluefish Partners, LLC. The property is often referred to as the bait shop for those familiar with Rowayton. Bluefish is owned by the Conroy family, who you may know from their restaurant down the street, Rowayton Seafood. The Conroys purchased this property within the past 2 years, and as they took ownership of the property, they realized that the existing bulkhead on the property was crumbling, as you can see in this picture. It was in need of some replacement, and so they engaged a couple engineering firms to get a new bulkhead installed. The new bulkhead is now in, but unfortunately, a CAM approval from you folks was not obtained in advance, so the purpose of this CAM application is to obtain the City of Norwalk's after-the-fact approval of the new and improved bulkhead at the site. When the applicant began the reconstruction process, there were several vendors and contractors involved, and they all required approvals from DEEP and the Army Corps, which approvals were obtained for the reconstruction, and they now have signed off on the finished product. The owner had the understanding that anything that happens on the water side of the coastal jurisdiction line goes to DEEP, and everything on the landward side goes to the city and P&Z, but didn't realize that bulkheads are pretty much the only waterside item that is allowed to also go to P&Z under the state zoning statutes. None of the contractors realized what the others were doing, and a CAM approval just fell through the cracks. But the project did get comprehensive review and approval by DEEP, the Army Corps, and the 5 Mile River Commission before construction. So the project includes the reconstruction of an existing bulkhead from about 1999 that needed to be replaced to maintain the existing structure, which was failing. The DEEP bulkhead approval has been submitted with our application, and it contains the certificate of permission from DEEP. Also included in the DEEP bulkhead approval are various plans prepared by Sound Engineer Associates, depicting the site and the bulkhead, including the project title elevations, a vicinity map, existing and proposed site plans, and existing and proposed section details of the bulkhead. As detailed in the certificate of permission from DEEP, the maximum seawall height does not exceed 7.4 feet, Also included in the application is the compliance certification form from DEEP, which was submitted upon conclusion of the reconstruction of the seawall, certifying to DEEP's Land and Water Resource Division that the final site conditions are in general conformance with the site plans. We've also submitted to you a CAM report prepared by Redness and Mead. As further detailed in the CAM report, the bulkhead is consistent with the goals and policies outlined in Connecticut General Statute Section 22A-92 Sub A, including preserving and enhancing coastal resources with the reconstructed flood and erosion control structure, which will help protect 5 Mile River erosion. This bulkhead previously existed, and the project is therefore consistent with the current and the former uses of the site, and it won't interfere with neighboring or harbor uses, as further detailed in the CAM report and as evidenced by DEEP's approval. Both of the neighbors of the property to the north and the south have just recently replaced their own bulkheads using the same construction methods. This application has also been reviewed by the 5 Mile River Commission, and they had no objection to it and issued a favorable letter, which you should have. So really, in conclusion, the bulkhead reconstruction does not have any adverse impact on coastal resources. The bulkhead, as installed, is functioning as expected, and DEEP has not raised any concerns regarding the bulkhead as constructed. We believe this application complies with your regulations and ask that you approve it. And thank you for your time.
Does anybody have any questions?
Attorney Dignati, in the 5 Mile River Commission letter, they listed 3 sort of conditions. Would those be suitable to be included as conditions of approval per the Planning and Zoning Commission? Do you have any objection to that?
That's a good question. As a general matter, no, I don't believe we have any objection. And Henry, who I believe is on as a panelist, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think they're fine. If you Emma, if you wouldn't mind pulling them up,
I'll share it right here so we can all be on the same page.
Yeah.
The one that I was a little questionable to me was that the timeline seemed a bit tight.
So we had gone to the 5 Mile River Commission for the initial submission for the installation of this bulkhead. And by the way, to introduce myself, Henry Conroy, thank you all for taking the time to hear our application. We really appreciate it. So some of these conditions are based on the installation of a bulkhead and the timing. We've already completed all of the work. So the timing that they reference is so that no work is occurring in the 5 Mile River during the busy season when there's a lot of boats moving around. We had the same condition presented when we applied for the bulkhead installation last year, and we completed within that timeline. I don't see a problem with including it, but I don't think it's relevant because the installation has already been completed.
Right. I think that's the thing here, is that this is an after the fact approval.
Got it. Okay.
And when we do apologize for that, this is a misunderstanding on our part, but we believe we went through the proper channels, and I think Emma did a great job describing the condition we're in right now. And it is functioning properly and was severely in need of repair. There was a risk, our property and the adjacent property, of quite literally, some parts of it falling into the river. So we thought it was really urgent to get to repair and install a new bulkhead.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Brian, how did it come to our attention that the owners had not gone through the P&Z process here?
I can also answer it.
Yeah, go ahead, Henry, since this one mostly was handled by Amelia. So
yeah, so Commissioner, we performed a tenant fit up, really a repair of the interior of the building that was an existing bait and tackle shop. It hadn't been in operation for any significant real operation for 10 or 15 years. It was our desire in purchasing the property to rehab the historic building that had been there since I think the original structure was built in the late 1700s, early 1800s. And so we kind of in keeping in line with what we do down the street at our restaurant, we wanted to revitalize a resource to the town and build something that was pretty cool, which is a revamped bait and tackle shop called the Bait Shop, which is operating now. And when we invited zoning to ensure that we had built the fit out to our zoning permit, they noticed the bulkhead, which we hadn't realized that was out of compliance. And so I think it was Lee from the zoning department identified that. And since then, we've been pursuing a CAM application so that we can get that rectified and make sure that the site is compliant with all zoning regulations.
Thank you.
Questions? If there are no other questions, does anybody have a motion?
I will motion to approve.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Is there a second? Second from John. Thank you, John. Yeah, here's the resolution.
So highlighted, I added it, and again, I don't know if it's necessary at this point, again, since it's after the fact. So this is kind of like what would be done usually ahead of time, but you know, up to you on whether or not this language even needs to be included. It's kind of not needed at this point.
Well, it looks like they may have been most useful during the construction, but they sort of generalized language. You certainly don't want to.
Yeah, either way, I don't think it largely impacts your decision here.
No, I don't think so either.
Brian,
What do you?
really quick question. Were there any, or is there a fee involved that the owners didn't pay by going this route?
No, so anytime you do an after the fact permit, we require the fees that you would have needed to get ahead of time. We require those anyway. So they still had to come to you for a CAM application, so they paid the CAM application fee. Any zoning permit fees they'll have to obtain, and then, you know, whatever other departments need approvals have to pay those fees as well. And I know you have, not that it's relevant for this discussion necessarily, but in part of relooking at the fee schedule is kind of looking at an after the fact, you know, fee penalty for you guys to consider.
Anna, this was your motion to approve. What's your opinion on these two additions? They're in yellow. Do you think it makes sense, or?
I think it doesn't hurt to keep it in.
Okay. Does anybody have another opinion on that? Then let's keep them in. Is there any further discussion or any further questions? Hearing none. Brian, can you do a roll call for this?
Sure. And then just to confirm, who seconded?
John.
Okay. And John, you're okay with those as well? Great. All right. So I'll start with Mr. Schulman.
Yes.
Ms. Lankowski.
Yes.
Mr. Hubers.
Yes.
Ms. Langalis.
Yes.
Ms. Tabashnik.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Jordan Byron.
Yes.
And Ms. Wells.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you
So
so much.
Caitlin can come back on and we'll move on to our next matter.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking that for me. So our next application is 2026-27, City of Norwalk Zoning Regulation Text Amendment to Article 4 in the EVTZ Village District Design Guides to modify the crosswalk standards as recommended by the Transportation, Mobility, and Parking Department report and recommended action. I know at our last meeting, Ben Young got on to tell us about the proposed changes. Is he here tonight, or are we moving forward with the presentation from last time as our to vote on?
I don't see Ben on, so we may be moving forward with that.
Okay. So with that, is there any discussion about this item? All right. So from my recollection, this is changing the crossings to increase visibility and changing the materials in order to make them more resilient and last a bit longer.
Yeah, largely to comply with sort of more formal and adopted safety standards. So
yeah, and compelled by state regulation on DOT standards and such. So, yeah. So with that, does anyone have a motion for this application? Thank you, Harvey. Is there a second? Thank you, Tammy. And so since this is just a change to the design guide, is there a resolution we need to look at, or is this just the, approving the changes as proposed in the memo?
Yeah, so this would just be a motion to approve changes to the EBTZ design guidelines as stipulated in TMP's memo.
Thank you. All right, is there any discussion on this item? All right, Brian, do you mind calling the roll for this?
Sure. Mr. Schulman?
I'm going to absent myself from this, although I understand what it's all about. I did not watch the video of the last meeting.
Okay. Ms. Lankowski?
Yes.
Mr. Hubers?
Yes.
Ms. Langalis?
Yes.
Ms. Stabashnik?
Abstain as I did not watch.
Ms. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Jordan Byron?
Yes.
And Mr. Bryce?
Yes.
I believe that's 7 yeses and 2 abstentions.
That carries. Thank you. So our next item is the public hearings. Unless anyone feels strongly, I'd suggest that we take item B, which is the St. George Greek Orthodox Church first, and then we move to the zoning regulation text amendment, and then to the revisions to fee schedules as time permits. Does anyone disagree with taking that order? All right. So next we will hear 2026-13 special permit, St. George Greek Orthodox Church, 238 West Rocks Road. Allow use of community space as a function hall, public hearing, report, and recommended action. So briefly, we'll take a break at 8 p.m. as I shared at the start of tonight's meeting. This is our first public hearing of the meeting, and so I wanted to walk through the structure of this. So first, we'll have the applicant give a presentation of their proposal. The commissioners and staff will have opportunities to ask the applicant questions. Once the applicant has completed their presentation, we'll move to public participation. At that point, everyone from the public will have an opportunity to speak. You'll have one opportunity to speak, but there is no time limit. We still ask you to be concise and, of course, polite. The portion of public participation is not a dialogue, so the applicant will respond to all of the comments at the end, and we'll reiterate the public participation component as we get to that stage. Afterwards, the applicant will respond to all of the comments made during public participation. So with that, who is representing 238 West Rocks Road?
I am. My name's Eric Bernheim. I'm an attorney at FLB Law. We have an office at 33 Riverside Avenue in Westport. Thank you for having us tonight. I am going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint to show you what we are proposing, which is fairly straightforward, I believe. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. So again, I'm Eric Burnham. I'm representing St. George Orthodox Church at 238 West Rocks Road. We're here tonight to ask for a modification of an approval from the February 15th, 2006 special permit, which approved the community center. So you can see here that the community center was approved, and the condition that we're asking that it be removed is that the hall be used for church members only and not be rented out for any events. So that's the condition we're proposing to remove. We are proposing a long list of conditions to replace that one in an effort to protect the neighbors from unreasonable noise and intrusion into their properties. It's important to note that there's no modifications to the site or the building or really the use of that building that's already allowed. It's just who's allowed to use that building for that purpose. The proposed conditions, I've put them up on here. They are part of our applicant statement and should be part of the record. So I'll run through them really quickly. That we're proposing that the community center only be used for religious and youth celebrations, that it not be marketed on any commercial event planner sites, that we at all times comply with the capacity limitations of the building pursuant to health and fire marshal, obtain any approvals for any events that do take place there, whether it's the fire marshal, health department, ADA compliance, and then also the transportation, mobility, and parking department. We will hire, and we have been hiring private security for events in order to ensure compliance with the noise ordinance. So this is one that was flagged by your staff. So we're happy to discuss how we can satisfy the staff's concerns and your concerns as to their comment, which we can get to when you ask questions to us. We're also proposing that these events will end no later than 10:30 from Sunday through Thursday, and no later than 12 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. And at all times, we will comply with the Norwalk noise ordinance. To the extent practicable, we'll keep the doors and windows closed when there's an event taking place, and that any sound system that is producing music would have a compressor installed to ensure compliance with the Norwalk noise ordinance. We would fully comply with the Norwalk noise ordinance at all times and comply with all the lighting standards on site. All parking will remain on the property. No queuing of parking or buses or Ubers on West Rocks Road or Bain Street will be allowed, and our security will be informed of that, and we'll be sure to have adequate staff to make sure that this is all done safely and that the adjacent road network operates safely. If there's any verified and documented violations, that we would have a self-reporting requirement to the commission. These conditions were taken from the Gray Barnes approval for their commercial event space. That, as the commission is aware, I'm sure, is a commercial enterprise, whereas St. George is a not-for-profit. But both are surrounded by residential homes. So we're proposing these because we feel that if they were sufficient to protect the neighbors for Gray Barnes, which is a commercial operation, they should be sufficient to protect the neighbors for our church-related and events for non-parishioners.
Attorney Bernheim, if I may, it seems clear from the materials that we've received that in the past you have used an event planning agency to encourage people to use the site, despite the fact that the approval language that we issued made it clear that it was only to be used for members of the church. How is it that that happened?
You beat me to the punch, Mr. Schulman, because this next slide that's up now tries to explain that for you. So historically, the church has made anyone interested in having an event at the community center for a celebration become a member of the church. There wasn't really any there's a little bit of an ambiguity as to what does it mean to be a member of the church. Does it mean a parishioner, or does it mean you pay a membership fee or something of the sort? So they made them become members. It became apparent that staff did not agree that that was the intent of the original condition. They've acknowledged that. There was a violation issued as a result of that, of the church's interpretation of that. Since the violation has been issued, the only non-parishioner events that took place since the violation has been issued were under contract prior to the violation having been issued. No new non-parishioner events were scheduled. And the church made this decision, and we discussed it at great detail. We approached those non-parishioners that had events scheduled, asked if they could relocate the event. Unfortunately, it was too late in the game, and they could not find an event of a comparable price and location that they could afford to move the event to. So the church made the decision that in good conscience, they couldn't cancel these events as a result of the violation. They're going to own that. They will deal with that violation. However, once the violation was issued, no non-member, non-parishioner events occurred. The church really was unaware that that they were being marketed by a third party event planner on their website. She is a member of the church, so it was always going to her as a member. When we discussed this with staff and at the citation hearing, we decided in discussion with the citation officer as well as staff that we would send a cease and desist to that business, requiring them to remove the church from one of the venues that they use frequently, and she did so. And now we're not aware of any other commercial event planner that has identified the church as a location where they can rent through that event planner. And that will be our goal in the future, to make sure that that does not take place again, and that all events are run through the church in the church's office.
Mr. Bernheim,
yes.
You're saying that what was happening was that somebody from wherever would say, I would like to rent out the whatever for whatever, and you guys would make that person a member so that they would be allowed to rent it. Is that what you're saying on this slide?
Yeah. Yes,
okay. In the letter from, I guess, the head of the church, the priester, it says that we never entered into agreements with any other external organization. The events were hosted by a member of our parish, who's the one who had it on the website, who rented the hall. I don't understand how you couldn't have known which is.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
He's referring to the commercial event planner, Nikki. She is a member of the church, and when she wanted to book an event, she would rent out the church, pay the fee, and then she would plan the event, and they would utilize it for that purpose.
So that was happening in addition to like knighting people as members of the church so they could rent, like both things were happening?
Yes, if we had a family who came to us and wanted to have their child's birthday party there, Sweet 16 or quinceañera, bar or bat mitzvah, anything that they came for, they would pay a membership fee to become a member of the church, and then they would be allowed to rent the space for their event.
Thank you. So there were essentially like two sort of lines of rental that maybe didn't fall under the original permit. And were any of these events permitted by the city?
You mean for a special event?
No, like getting a permit Like particularly the ones done by the event planner, don't you need to request a permit from the city? No?
I don't believe so. Not if it's as part of a, you guys now call it an event space, but also a community center allows for social activities and and the such as well. So if it's a permitted use under that, then I don't think you need to go and get an additional permit. I don't think, if you have a wedding at Shore Haven or Shore and Country, that you go to the zoning and you ask for a permit for that wedding.
Okay, thanks. I didn't mean zoning, but I thought there was I thought I saw that in the one of the meeting materials or the resolution that they would have to get permits. And so I was wondering if what it meant was that they hadn't been.
No, I think what we had suggested was if we're required to get a permit from the fire department or health department or something of the sort, if it triggered that, then we would obviously agree to do that. I don't think additional zoning permits are required for these sorts of events when permissible under the special permit or the permitted use site plan special permit, whatever it happens to be.
Well, if the church kitchen has a permit from the health department, but the food isn't coming from the church kitchen, you have to get a permit from the health department to bring the food in. And if they're serving liquor, somebody has to have a liquor license. I presume the person holding the event would have to get a temporary liquor license for the event. Has anybody kept track of that?
I can't speak to that. I think if there's a caterer that's bringing in the food, then the caterer would normally be responsible for that. If there's a caterer providing liquor, if it's a family event, I don't know if you need to get a temporary liquor permit for what's essentially a family barbecue or picnic within this space. I don't know if that family needs to get a liquor permit or not. I'm not a liquor law attorney, but certainly if that's the case and if that's required, then yes, they should be doing that. I don't think that's under your purview necessarily.
No, but I'm just suggesting if you're going to say that you get all the applicable permits, somebody should be reviewing what permits you really need.
Absolutely. And the church has counsel.
I think they're more than you think.
The church also has counsel who's a parishioner and would be Peter Lathoris, and he would be responsible for helping the church and advising the church on whether or not those are necessary or not. Any other questions before I continue?
Well, I have a question, but for either Steve or Brian. And that is, if we were to approve this, wouldn't it open up the possibility of virtually every church, synagogue, and mosque in the city that has the space turning into some sort of potentially into an event space?
It could. It could. I mean, you can technically say that there's site conditions here that make it, more realistic, but certainly would definitely, you'd see some other, potentially see other houses of worship look to do the same kind of use.
Thank you, Brian.
I found a few houses of worship that seem to be in residential areas. I don't know if they're in the exact same zone, that are advertising event space rentals on their websites specifically to non-members. Do we know if this is part of, I guess this one only has a permit or special permit because they were building a new community center, right? It's the only reason. Right. So the other ones may not have anything. I think. Okay. Anyway, just putting that out there.
Tammy, did you have
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Bernheim, can you define what youth is, I mean, if a young person is getting married, is that considered a youth event? Or is it just teenagers? Does your congregation have a specific youth program?
You know, what we're envisioning with that are, you know, bar and bat mitzvahs, which are also religious celebrations. Is on top of that, I would say a wedding is a religious celebration. So I think that that would fall under it, whether you consider those individuals getting married youth or not. The youth comment was really meant for, you know, a sweet 16, a child's birthday party, a quinceanera are popular at this location because it is economical and more readily available financially than many of the country clubs, I'll say. So when I say a youth event, it's not necessarily a youth program from St. George's Parish, because we wouldn't need to be back in front of you to ask for that. They're members, they're parishioners. There's no argument that they're allowed to have an event there. It would be more so slated towards a Sweet 16 or the quinceanera or something of that sort, where maybe it's a christening or, well, and again, that falls under the religious thing. What we're trying to give you some comfort of is that it's not going to be a bachelor party. It's not going to be like an adult party that's not religious based, and I would consider weddings religious based. It's so on and so forth. If there were, you know, if one of the schools wanted to have their school dance there, I would say that that's a youth event, right? Whether it's a prom or a father-daughter dance or something of that sort for middle school. That's what I envision. And I'm happy to discuss and work with you and work with staff on these conditions to make sure that you guys are comfortable with them, that we're not going to take advantage of the situation. That's not the intent. We don't want big raging parties here where there's a lot of alcohol or worse happening there. We want them to be family celebrations, life moments that people have access to this community center for.
Okay, thank you for that. And then just a follow up to that, in our resolution, community building is capitalized, may be used for events for religious and youth celebrations for members of the community, but that community is lowercase. So does that mean greater Norwalk residents, not your congregation community?
Yes, that would mean, you know, it would mean the greater Norwalk community. It could be somebody from Stamford. It could be somebody from Bridgeport. You know, it could be anybody. It's to open it up to whoever wants to rent it, as long as it's a youth event or a religious celebration.
Okay, thank you.
Diana?
I know that the event company that was advertising is no longer advertising, but part of their promotion was saying that you could host up to 500 people for cocktails and 300 for a sit-down dinner. Do you know what the fire marshal's limitation is on the facility?
Well, I do not know for sure. I'm hoping that it's 300 for sit-down dinner and 500 for cocktail hour, because that's what she was marketing. But certainly, we would not be allowed to have more individuals in there than what the fire code allows for, and we will take that seriously.
Is it true that you have 157 or 6 or 9 parking spaces?
I'm not familiar with how many parking spaces they have. It's whatever was approved and per the last site plan. It's what was required and it's what's there. Again, we're not changing the building. We're not changing the proposed use. We're just trying to take away the condition that says the only people who can use it are those who are parishioners of the Greek Orthodox Church. So we don't have to provide any more parking or less parking. It's the same use.
So one more question. Would you be willing to consider limiting the number of people who came to less than the fire permit allowed?
I'd have to run that past the church, but I guess it really depends upon what is that number? What do you have a number in mind?
I don't know. I would have to think about it more, but it seems that 300 or 500 people would be a very large gathering. So
I agree with you.
okay. Well, thank you. Okay.
Let me talk to my folks over text here, and maybe I can get you an answer before we finish up tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much.
JJ?
Yes, good evening. My question is, if everyone who wants to use your space has to become a member, I want to make sure that is the fact that you're saying, that they must become a member of your church. Is that correct?
Well, that's what the church was doing when they were trying to comply with the condition of the 2006 approval, which said that no non-church members could have events there. So they were making them members so that they thought that they were in compliance. We know that staff disagrees with that interpretation. So we're back in front of you asking you to remove that condition. If you remove this condition, they would not be required to become members of the church in order to rent it.
Right. So my follow-up question was, how is that enforced? And how do you keep in compliance? And how many members are you on how many members do you have on your rolls?
Well, when they would book the event, they would sign a document saying that they're becoming a member of the church, and then they would be allowed to book the event. So
in essence, if you have 1,000 people who wants to become a member, then you have the possibility of a rolling, continuous event going on in this neighborhood.
Well, yeah, I guess feasibly, yes. If people wanted to have an event 7 days a week, and they were willing to rent it, then yes. But I don't think that's realistic. People don't. Event spaces don't have constant events. The church really isn't in the business of going out and looking for these types of events. They just want to be.
It seemed as though it was being marketed. Is that correct?
It was being marketed by a private event planner. She also marketed about 10 other event spaces. So it wasn't just this one. There were others as well.
At what point do you turn people away?
Well, the church's parishioner events will come first, obviously. And if there were, I guess if you're concerned about there being events there 7 days a week, I don't think that that's our goal or even realistic. We could certainly talk about, and I could talk with my folks about putting a limit on the number of private events that they could do that are non-parishioners. If that would adequately address your concern, then we could talk about that.
It certainly would. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna.
Yeah, I have a question for Brian. They were cited because an event space is not a permitted use in CD 1L. And then also there's the separate thing that they had a special permit that said don't rent to outside members. But like, I'm not crazy about how we structured things for Silvermine, and we haven't even heard the public yet or finished the presentation. I'm not saying I'm in support of them being able to do this, but I'm a little concerned if we did want to allow them to do this, with doing it by changing their special permit and then listing all these conditions versus by saying we're going to allow event space as a permitted use in this and that zone for religious facilities with these special conditions, and having it apply to any religious facility in that zone, because I am seeing a number of them that are doing this. And while I wanted to broaden the childcare thing, the concept is similar. This residential zone, religious places often have really big spaces with big parking lots. They're doing weddings for themselves anyway. It makes sense. But there should be a lot of requirements, and we shouldn't only be holding this place to requirements that like all the other religious spots in the zone don't have to follow. Do we still have Brian?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Would that be another way to approach this issue, to look at changing whether
I
an
think-
event space is allowed in the zone to begin
Yes.
with, making a
that's
special
probably
permit?
absolutely probably the cleanest way to do it would be to just have it listed as a special permit use when it's associated with something like a place of worship.
Mhm.
And then you can attach additional limitations that are already spelled out within the regulations. And then if
Mhm.
anything is super site specific, you still have the ability to require that it's a special permit, and then you can address those, whatever that criteria is, as you're doing now.
Okay, thanks. And have they been, has there been a fine assessed already for the period of time that between when they were noticed and when they put in this application?
That I'm not sure. Let me look at their notice and I can see if I can.
No fine has been assessed yet. We requested a hearing, and at that first hearing, we either had already submitted for our special permit modification or had indicated that we would do so prior to the next one. So they gave us time to do that. And then once we did that, they've been postponing the citation hearings until after we get this resolved. Again, I think,
Okay.
we are owning the fact that we did something that we should not have done after we got the notice of violation. And again, we did that because we had contracts with families and the Chamber of Commerce and others that we could not just pull the rug out from under them and say, you cannot have your event that you've been planning for X amount of months because we're in hot water with zoning. So we will, we will deal with that, and we will address that with the citation officer once this matter is resolved with you folks.
To your point earlier, Anna, I think one of the outcomes that is available to us, right, is whether or not we approve this is to look at that text amendment as you described, right? And in the case that you were outlining where there are conditions that we haven't contemplated enough or aren't sure if they're a good fit or not, we can figure that out as it makes sense for this application, and then similarly look at the wider zone. So I think that's absolutely a path we could take if we choose to later tonight or whenever we move to deliberations.
Thank you.
JJ, do you have another question? I didn't see your hand go down, so I didn't know if it's from before. There you go. Attorney Bernheim, would you like to continue your presentation? I'm not sure if you have additional slides.
I'd love to. And I welcome questions as we go along too. I think some of the stuff we're gonna address with the presentation that we're asked already. So it may be a little bit duplicative now, but bear with me. I'll try to speed it up where we've already discussed things. So the notice of violation that was issued, again, it was not issued for live music. That was one of the items flagged in your staff report. It was also saying that we're using this for event space when it was approved as a community center. And it's being operated as a community center. And I'm going to compare the community center definition with event space within your regs shortly. And also there was no violation issued for live music. I don't know why they did that, other than that live music is not prohibited here because in 2006, live music was not regulated by the zoning regulations. So live music was not regulated until 2011. And I know these are small, but I did submit all of this supporting documents to Brian and Steve today. So it's part of the record. So, but I was going to walk you through it tonight. So again, live music was not regulated in Norwalk until 2011. Our special permit was approved in 2006. And our live music occurred regularly at events that took place at the community center since it was finished and operational. So all of the live music is a pre-existing non-conforming use because it wasn't regulated prior to September 29, 2011. And many of the letters that you received that are part of the record from the parishioners confirm that they've had events there and there was live music as currently defined, live music not necessarily being a band, but also from a DJ, amplified music at an event. So, and then I give you copies, which are part of the record that, through 2004, there's no live music definition. Again, this one is through 2009, there's no live music regulation. Then this regulation here, it shows it was added effective September 29th, 2011. That's the first time in your regulations that you define what live music is and you start regulating it. So again, the notice of violation didn't cite us for having live music, even though the staff report flags it, and that's because it was not regulated when we were approved. Also, the notice of violation references a community center being used as event space. However, event space has never been defined in your regulations. It's a permitted use in your zoning table, but it's prohibited in the CD1L, which is where we are. But if you look at today's regulations, a community center is also prohibited in a CD1L. So we are, again, our community center is a pre-existing non-conforming use under the 2006 special permit approval. A community center definition is a nonprofit facility for recreation, social or cultural activities under the management and unified control of the membership. So this community center is under the unified control of St. George Orthodox Church, which is a nonprofit facility. Event space is not defined in your regulations, and your regulations say that then you go to the dictionary to figure out what does that term mean. So an event is a social activity, so just like community center, social activity, and then space is, the location, the building where it's located. So event space says that you can have social activity in a building, and that's what our community center is. It's a building where we can have social activities present in our building. So again, I think the point of this is that we are and have been operating as a community center. That's the permitted use there, and our use is consistent with that. It's not an event space. It's a community center where we're allowed to have events because that's what community centers allow for. One of the things that I'm sorry, Brian, I don't know. Do you want to?
Yeah, Eric, back to the live music. I mean, generally, isn't it, for zoning codes, if it's not specifically permitted, it's prohibited. So if our zoning code was silent on live music, I think the assumption would be that it's not permitted.
I don't know if that's the case because there was certainly live music in Norwalk prior to 2011. So it wasn't a quiet city, I'll call it, a dry city. There was live music all over the city, and I think for my digging, what it looked like was that it was not being enforced consistently. Sometimes you'd say yes, sometimes you'd say no, not you, obviously, but sometimes the city would say yes, it's okay, and other times they'd say no, it wasn't. So in 2011, they decided to codify it, but it doesn't mean that it was prohibited. I mean, there was plenty of weddings. I mean, my bar mitzvah was in 1990s in Norwalk at the Norwalk Inn. We had a DJ, it happened. So, so it's just I'm just trying to flush out so we can address the comments from staff. And my goal here is to come up with conditions. If we comply with the noise ordinance, then what's it matter if there's live music there or not? And I don't think that a text amendment is necessary because it was pre-existing the codification of the live music regulation. And I guess that's my point. I'm not trying to say we can have bands until 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. I'm trying to say that I don't think we need a text amendment. I don't think we need to do more than just modify this special permit. And we need to agree on some conditions that you guys feel adequately protect the neighbors, because we want to be good neighbors. So, and then to the point, we also did some digging as to other religious institutions that kind of market their halls, and we've called them. We've called Temple Shalom, we've called St. Matthew's Catholic Church, and said that we were interested in having an event, and they were interested in renting us their halls. So when you look at their approvals, they do have special permit approvals, and there's no condition that they only have events for their members. Their approvals just approve these halls, and all that. I think this is St. Matthew's, that header is wrong. But both of those special permit approvals provide for community halls, gathering halls, assembly halls, and there's no condition that they have to be used just for parishioners. So, in conclusion, we're really just asking to be treated consistently with Temple Shalom, St. Matthew's, other religious institutions within the city of Norwalk, as well as the commercial Gray Barns, and even some of the country clubs that I believe are also in residential zones that have event spaces. We're just looking to be consistent with those. We're requesting that you remove the restriction relating to non-parishioner events. And, our position is at most, this is an intensification of a non-conforming use as a community center that was approved in 2006 by special permit when it was allowed. So it's not an expansion of a use. We're not trying to change anything. We're just trying to allow more people to utilize it. And the conditions we're proposing, we believe, will alleviate the issues with the neighbors, but we're open to discussing how to strengthen those for the commission so that they feel confident that we will succeed in being good neighbors and not impacting the neighbors adversely. And then lastly, and I mentioned this earlier, there's a need for this sort of space in the city of Norwalk. The country club, Shore Haven, Shore and Country, renting those facilities are very, very expensive. This is something that is much more economical and available to more of the Norwalk community than those other places. If you want to have a special event, there's really a lack of these types of community centers that are still elegant, but are economical as well. And we believe that this will be good for the Norwalk community, especially when we figure out how to get these conditions right, which is really important and a key point. And I brought that up several times because I believe it. I think if we can agree on some conditions to remove this, to remove that one condition, but to protect the neighbors, then I think we can. It can be a win-win for everybody, for the church, for our immediate neighbors, and for the greater Norwalk community that will now have access to this great facility. But thanks. I'm available for any more questions or however you want to run the rest of the night, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Bernheim. Are there additional questions for Attorney Bernheim? So on your last point, you'd raised about talking through some of the conditions. Do you mind pulling up the conditions that you are proposing there so we can see them on the screen and maybe talk through a couple of them?
Sure.
Thank you.
Bear with me one sec.
Thank you. So to take these a little bit out of order, the first one I wanted to ask you about was around the private security and ensuring compliance with the noise ordinance. Can you walk us through how they'll be able to ensure that compliance with the noise ordinance?
Well, we can certainly have the private security get familiar with the Norwalk noise ordinance and maybe have noise monitors or something of the sort so that they can walk around and test it occasionally and make sure that it's fully compliant.
Going back to the first item, we talked a lot about how the membership condition was sidestepped or misinterpreted in order to grant people membership for the purpose of holding an event. I see in this language the similar opportunity to mark an event as religious when it for the purposes of being able to host such an event there, right? I don't think this commission's has the authority to regulate what is or isn't religious per se, and I don't want to get into that. But I worry that this language doesn't really change things much from where it is today.
It's a fair point. Maybe we, and if maybe we put weddings, certainly, if we could call things out, right? Or we could,
sure.
We could clarify, for example, bachelor parties are not allowed, or something of that sort. Maybe it's easier to prohibit certain types of parties if you have things in mind, as opposed to trying to call out every type of event that could possibly be there.
Agreed. Enumeration is challenging. One thing I was thinking about as I was reviewing both the materials that you've submitted, staff submitted, as well as the letters that have come in from the public, was it seems like the majority of the concerns, or at least a solid portion of them, are related to noise complaints, especially in the evening and late night hours and early morning hours in some instances. So one way I was looking at this first condition is, instead of talking about event type, looking at event time, for events that are religious and family oriented, as you were describing earlier, maybe something that's aligned with the noise ordinance's time band of daytime hours being specified till 8 p.m., for example, right, as a way to address some of the concerns that neighbors had with late evening events and noise and disturbances on their property. So that was something I was thinking about and wanted to share that with you and with the commission as well.
So are you saying that you want events to be over by 8 p.m., or are you saying that you want
the former?
You want the former. You want them to be over by 8 p.m. I guess my concern there is you may as well deny the application in full, because I don't know if 8 p.m. is really workable when somebody's planning an event. If you're going to have a wedding, which is a religious event, or even some, quite frankly, some of the bar mitzvahs this day and age that my kids go to, I mean, they're out there sometimes at these country clubs, which are in residential zones, until 1 a.m. They're there. So to say that we have to end it at 8, I don't know if that's really workable. I appreciate the thought, and I do think that we could work on the second to last event, or the second to last condition there is addressing timing. Could we work on those times a little bit? We may be able to, but 8 p.m. to finish an event, like the Chamber of Commerce event that happened there wasn't over until 10 p.m. probably. And that's the Norwalk business community. So I don't disagree with you. Having a hard and fast time is good and easier to regulate, and makes Brian's life a lot easier, I'm sure. But 8 p.m. I don't think is workable.
Okay.
I think I agree with you, Chief, and I think there's room related to the timing. I'm not crazy about the religious and youth celebrations, trying to define that. But I think there is a difference between like my niece and nephew's like Rager B'nai Mitzvah, which was at a private event space. And like, I think it's a problem that we don't have a definition of event space and say where they can be allowed and what the requirements are. But I'm not going to get into what a country club might do. But I think in general, I have the expectation that if the party is at a church or a synagogue, it's generally not like a rager. That's one of the things about it being lower cost. I don't think it's unreasonable to say events must end by 10 o'clock or no alcohol necessarily, or I'm not saying definitely, but like having like slightly different requirements than a normal event space, not normal, but like, you know what I mean, a commercial event space might have. I think that's not unreasonable. And I think one of the issues that the neighbors have had and are worried will get worse is that this particular church seems to be operating their event space like slightly more towards the commercial side of things than towards the traditional like community religious facility type of things, for what it's worth.
Sure. JJ?
I personally don't have an issue with the 10:30 curfew, but I do have an issue with the quantity of events that may happen and impose on this neighborhood.
Appreciate that. Attorney Bernheim, I know you were reaching out to your client about a couple of the details there. Have you heard anything back on those couple of points?
As you can imagine, I have several of the church council, so I'm getting kind of pulled. I can certainly, what I think is probably better is give me some time, and even you had mentioned a break at 8 o'clock. I could probably get some of them on the phone and try to talk to them as opposed to text with them, and then I can give you a better response when we come back on those two issues. I mean, I hear you loud and clear. Timing of when the events end is important, and for some, the number of events. And let me ask a couple of questions about that. Is it a number of private events, or is it a number of any event? Like right now, we could have events 7 days a week, you know, as long as we comply with the noise ordinance for as late as we want. If they were all parishioner events, it'd be the funnest church in America if that happened, right? But is it, you know, are we limiting it to just private events outside of the church that would be limited?
JJ, did you have something in particular in mind there?
Sorry, I left my hand up. Okay, by mistake. But I do want to respond to his question.
Please.
Okay, let me just lower my hand first. Okay, so the type of event, and I love the fact that, you know, it's going to be a diversity of events and a diversity of different types of celebrations. That's wonderful. I'm just going to stand by my initial concern that with all these new members coming in, you know, everybody who wants to have a party there has to sign up as a member. And now it's like, okay, as long as you're a member, you can have a party here. So if you have 1,000, if your membership roll has ballooned to 1,000 from what it initially was, and everybody has, you know, that open door policy of we can have as many events here as possible, you know, as you know, allowable, then that is a negative impact on the community, because now you have an increase of traffic, an increase of noise, an increase of like everything is significantly increased because of your open membership policy for anyone who wants to have an event there. Mind you, I mean, I think it's wonderful. The diversity is great, but I'm just saying that it's just significantly increases the probability of more events, much more events than I think you initially planned. And if you can find a way to streamline that, okay, we're going to have 3 events a week. or, during the summertime, 4 events or 5 events. But every day, if that door is wide open, I can just see that this is just, a negative impact to the community.
I hear you. Let me talk to my folks during the break, and we'll come back to you on those 2 points. Cap on the number of events somehow, some way, and an end time for the events. And I guess I'll say this too. Obviously, we have to comply with the noise ordinance no matter what time the events end or the such, right? So, so let's let me come back to you with those 2. If there's other conditions that people are worried about, I'm happy to keep chatting, and if I can answer, great. If not, I can come back after the break.
Thank you so much.
John.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could have any idea of how many events occurred last year in this space, and approximately what percentage of them were private events.
I'd have to pull that up. I don't think there was. I don't even think on average there was one event a week. There's certainly less than that. I believe. I know once we got the violation, we looked at the schedule, and it wasn't. There weren't events every single week, and that was during the holiday time. Now, what they really kind of keep track of more so than anything are the private events, less what are the parish events, right? I mean, they have, they have like a dance class that happens that teaches Greek dance weekly, I think. I certainly wouldn't want that to count towards our limit on events. So, but we can, I can give you that. I can get you that number as well.
Diana?
And I appreciate it if you further investigate possibly putting a limit on the number of attendees. I know that we talked about Silvermine. It's a much smaller, more congested area, but I believe that was a limit of 90 people. So I wouldn't be expecting 90 people, but I would like to find out if they would be open to limiting the number of people.
Yeah, again, I think with that, it's something that I could discuss and try to recommend to my clients as it relates to private events. For the parishioner events, if they have 400 folks because of families and their kids and so on and so forth, I don't think that they're going to be willing to kind of stop that. But I also think from my reading of the neighbor letters, it's not really the issues that they've raised have more so been for, I believe, the private events than the church-related events. So, I really want to address a lot of these conditions as it relates to those private events to ensure that they're going to be adequately protected.
Okay.
So,
thank you. Brian, I'd love to have sort of an analysis of the 1L zone at least, and the number of religious institutions that might take advantage of holding events for non-members if we were to authorize something with limitations, or are already doing so, because the ones I see advertised are 300, 400 members, right? Or 300, 400 people they're advertising for that. So, I would worry about limiting this site to something that other folks are already doing seemingly without issue.
Yeah,
But I'm generally curious about that.
Yeah, I can look into doing that. And then I think the second part of that is, should those other places also be doing that?
Right. Like maybe we decide like this all needs to be brought down, or maybe it's like the number is whatever the fire code is, but it has to end at 10 o'clock or whatever it is. Like,
yeah. And then my 2 cents, and this is kind of separate and more for Eric, is it seems like any potential like limiting number on total events would be, maybe it's more geared towards the ones that have live music and or the ones that go beyond a certain hour are the ones that are limited. And then my only concern with doing a cap on the number of people is I don't know how we as a department would regulate that if you have an event that's going on at 10 o'clock at night, and we limited it to 200 people and 250 people show up. Planning and zoning staff, we're not going to be there at 10 o'clock at night. And it'd be difficult for neighbors who are documenting it, saying that they're exceeding that amount to provide that as like actual proof, whereas like an hour cutoff is a little bit easier because they can give us documentation that, hey, this event is going beyond, such and such hour that it was supposed to end at.
Yeah, I feel like if the fire code allows it should be limited by the building.
Right, you've got fire
and
code
the parking space, not by a random number. But there are downsides to living next to a big or small religion. I used to live next to some place that was nuts. I don't know. I'm just talking to myself right now. I'm sorry about that.
So one thing I wanted to add is, as we were talking about the Silver Mine district and such, is that it's an overlay, right? It's a district that we contemplated and figured out what made sense in the context of that area for those regulations, and that it was this commercial use in a residential area. And I know the commission has taken interest in other commercial uses in residential areas like corner stores, for example. I remember we spent a good amount of time talking about and such. And I feel similar to what you've expressed in that, I'm curious to look at this more widely to see where, how it should apply consistently across religious facilities or, within the CD1L generally. It's also, me just talking out loud. But does anyone else have questions or comments or discussion at this time?
Just so that I can clarify one thing, they took a picture of the maximum occupant load permitted fire marshal certificate at the church just now, and it's 271 with tables and chairs, 581 without tables and chairs.
You said 581?
Yes, without tables and chairs. So clearly they will comply with that, but I'll talk to my folks.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Attorney Bernheim? Okay. Attorney Bernheim, do you have anything else for your presentation at this time?
No, not at this time.
Okay. So given the timing and for members of the public as well who may not have participated in public hearings before, there's a sequencing we want to make sure we keep intact here, that information is introduced into the record before you have a chance to speak, so that way you can respond and comment on it. So given that Attorney Bernheim would like to speak to his clients briefly, and we had scheduled a break at 8 p.m., I suggest we take our break 20 minutes early starting now and resume at 8 p.m. And hopefully Attorney Bernheim has heard back from his clients. We will have discussion based on that, and then we'll move to the public comment and move on with the rest of the application. Does anyone have any objections to us going on break for 20 minutes, resuming at 8 p.m.?
Don't.
Okay.
I'm all for it, personally.
Okay, we will suspend, and I will see you all at 8 p.m. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, we are resuming the planning and zoning meeting tonight. Attorney Bernheim, did you have a chance to speak with your client during the break?
I did speak to my points of contact, and there's 3 of them that were there. However, they advised me that any of these sorts of I'll call them concessions, additional conditions, need to kind of get approved by, if we're going to offer them up, they need to be approved by the church council. So what I think would make sense is that I have the list of questions. I know your concerns. We could have a church council meeting fairly quickly in the coming days or week, next week or so, I could be there, I could talk to them, and then I could come back to you. So I think we keep the hearing open, and then I could report back to you if that's acceptable to you, Mr. Chair, and the rest of the commission. I think that's probably the best way to go, so that we can give you information that we know the entire church council is on board with.
I appreciate that. My only point of confliction is I would love for the public to be able to chime in to see if there's anything else that would be worth discussing with the board. But I recognize that means that with new information coming in, we'd have to reopen to the public afterwards that meeting. So I guess as a point of ordering there, Steve, do you see any issues with us taking that approach of hearing the public tonight, and then having additional public comment following feedback from Attorney Burnham in the Church Council?
No, I think at that point you just try to caution the public to speak to the outstanding matter, which would just be any additional information that's received.
Okay.
But there's no way you can't restrict somebody from commenting on new information that's received.
Absolutely. Yep. I see that we have quite a turnout tonight. I know folks have submitted a number of letters, so I want to make sure folks are heard, and that hopefully at our next meeting we're able to hear the remainder of it and be able to take an action. But that's just my perspective. Does anyone on the commission feel differently about how we should approach this this evening? All right. So before we move to the public participation part, does anybody else have any questions or discussions or comments before we open it up to the public? Okay. Attorney Burnham, do you have anything else that you would like to add before we open it up to the public?
No, thank you.
Great. All right, so the next portion of this hearing is public comment. So as I had said a few hours ago, this is your opportunity to speak and share comments about what you've just heard and what you have seen in the application. You only have one opportunity to speak, though as noted a moment ago, if there's new information introduced into the record, you will have an opportunity to speak about that new information. Thank you everyone who submitted written testimony and letters and emails. Staff has provided that to us and we will review that. I have read all of that, but it seems like we are not going to complete this application tonight and continue it to our next meeting. So we will have plenty of time to review all those letters submitted. With that, I ask that you not read your letters into the record tonight. We do have them submitted and we'll read them, but you are welcome to speak and reference your letter. But we ask you to be concise as there are a large number of people online and we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak. So with that, we ask that your points are clear and polite and concise. This portion is not a dialogue. This is your opportunity to share your perspective, and the applicant will have an opportunity to respond. We will likely field those responses at our next meeting, though we will see how tonight unfolds. With that, we ask that you start with your full name and your address. Brian, do you mind sharing how folks can participate in public comment this evening?
Sure. I'm subbing in for Brian now.
Oh,
so
sure.
I'll be handling the
Thank you,
duties.
Steve.
Hopefully it goes smoothly. But yeah, there's already a couple hands raised. If you're joining, you can either use the raise your hand function that is on the bottom of the screen. There are a couple people I see dialed in by phone. If you're participating by phone and wanted to communicate, you just use *9 to raise your hand. And then once we allow you to speak, then you do *6 to actually talk at that point. So with that, first person is Ellen Pissarro.
Hey, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are. Please begin with your name and address.
Sure. Is there a way for me to go on camera or not needed?
It's not necessary. If you see the option, great, but otherwise, please begin.
Okay. So my name is Ellen Pissarro. I live at 228 West Rocks Road. I've been an adjacent neighbor to the church for almost 25 years. I'm writing to share my concern about this proposal, including the requested use within a CD 1L zone, and most importantly, to comment on the church's past adherence to commitments made to the neighborhood. So in 2006, I and many of my nearby homeowners, over 60% of which remain in the neighborhood at this time, were asked to support a proposal for the church to build a community center. At a neighborhood meeting at the church, we were informed that the space would be used for church-related events. The plan referenced a youth-focused gymnasium and a school, both of which support the community. Ultimately, construction of that building extended well over 10 years, during which time the site remained incomplete and visually disruptive, including piles of dirt, an open structure, and idle equipment stored on the property. This experience contributed to the concerns that the project did not proceed consistent to what was originally presented. The church subsequently leased the Greek school space to an outside for-profit preschool. While this has had limited impact on nearby residents, it's another example of how the use of the facility evolved from what was originally presented to neighbors. More recently, as you know, the facility has been rented for non-church events. Importantly, these outside events have had live music, which violates the current City of Norwalk noise ordinance. In my experience, again, adjacent neighbor, the noise from these events has been significant, audible inside my home, even with the windows closed, let alone from a measurement outside and at the property line. And citing the new noise ordinance, the application of the 45 decibel limit is enforced starting at 8 p.m., with these prior outside events extending well beyond that time frame. I want the Zoning Commission to understand that I am not seeking to impede the church's mission or anyone's ability to worship. I recognize the need for fundraising, and I want to be clear that neighbors have been very tolerant of both the annual festival and the for-profit daycare center. I knowingly purchased a home adjacent to a church. I do not, however, accept these events that are in direct violation to the city's current noise ordinance. The simple fact is we are in the CD1L zone and we are protected from noise violations, whether our homes are 100 yards or many miles away from a commercial zone. I respectfully ask the Commission to consider the cumulative neighborhood impacts of this request, which is expanding the use from what was originally granted by the neighbors, including the new regulations on live music. When I and my neighbors approved this request, we never would have approved what is basically transforming the original community space into what will essentially be one of the largest catering facilities in Norwalk. I am very familiar with events at both Shore Haven and Shore and Country, and neither of those spaces are designed for 300 to 500 people. I ask that you protect and uphold the intent and standards established for the CD1L zone, as well as respect the neighbor's original approval of a community space and apply the current noise ordinance regardless. Finally, since these rentals have begun, I have also observed increased non-event activity in the parking lot, including idle vehicles, screeching cars, and other behavior that feels unsafe. I've had to call the police for 10 plus cars that were doing donuts on the iced over parking lot. And I did that out of concern and safety for others. While residents can contact the police, I believe it's reasonable to expect the property owner to actively manage the site, including monitoring security cameras and contacting law enforcement when necessary. This has not been the case. And I can only imagine what else will happen when this community center becomes a full-on for-profit catering center. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a couple names in here I'm going to have a little trouble pronouncing, so I apologize in advance. Next is Aliki Panagiatis. Oh, and she's disappeared.
Looks like she fell a little further down the list. There we go. The hand is back up.
Okay, there she goes. Okay, you can go ahead now.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Aliki Panayotides, and I live at 15 Honey Hill Road in Norwalk. I am speaking in support of St. George's application. We understand that some of the neighbors have raised concerns currently tonight and over the years and have referenced being tolerant over our community. We respect that perspective for sure, and we recognize that this process is about balancing neighborhood concerns with the needs of the broader community. St. George has been a long-standing church in Norwalk that already serves the community in many ways outside of our members and our own parishioners. This request tonight is simply to allow the continued and structured use of an existing community space for gathering and events that are common for similar facilities within residential areas in Norwalk. We are asking for fair and consistent conditions that reflect how comparable churches and community venues are approved and operated, so the space can function in a way practical and in a responsible way. I appreciate your time, and we really truly hope that the board approves this request for the greater community of Norwalk. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I think I apologize because I'm also going to mispronounce Gus Siflides. If you would like to begin.
Yes. My name is Gus Siflides. I live on 25 Camp Street here in Norwalk. I've been a resident of Norwalk for 57 years. I was at the grand opening of the church in 1976 and performed live in traditional costumes with live music. This is in 1976. I am also president of the Pontian Society Pondos here in Norwalk, located at 7 Isaac Street, which functions as a learning center for our culture, our language, our dances, and our music, which are vital to the continuation of our culture so that our children do not forget, so that we do not lose our identity. St. George Church festivals date as far back as 1976. Until the present, we have had local bands with traditional instruments, performers from Greece, performers from as far away as Australia, this dating back to at least 30 years ago. We believe, and under the current guidelines, that the building size and the parking spaces conform to the fire marshal regulations as to occupancy. St. George is an institution that has helped develop good, productive, upstanding citizens of this community. We are involved in countless community service programs, the most important of which is the Feed the Hungry program every single week of the year. Any sort of action that would hinder the income potential of our culture center would in turn put all of our programs at serious risk. We implore the committee and the people that are making these decisions to please take those things into consideration. As was spoken earlier, I noticed that we had talked about similarities between our community center and some of the other venues that are in similar residential areas and are having functions on a much more regular basis. Our church, which is in dire need of funds to continue all its programs, should be restricted, whereas country clubs that are already making money hands over foot can be allowed to have as many as 2 and 3 functions a day, not just a week, not just a month. And certainly our events have been held down to as few as probably less than 5 per month I heard conversation earlier that there was a possibility that we could have one per week if we had more members, et cetera, et cetera. That is certainly not the case. Our events are few and far between. They serve a greater purpose than what is believed, and I think the consideration should be for the benefit of the entire community of Norwalk. And not opposed. I'm not opposed to the people having their concerns as far as noise and neighbors, but we have tried to be good neighbors. We have tried to comply to all the regulations. Our lawyer spoke earlier, we have gotten security for the events in the last few events that we've had at the church. But I just want to reiterate the fact that this is an important institution for growing young, responsible citizens for this community, and anything that would hinder its development should not be considered. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope we come up with a decision that will satisfy everyone in Norwalk.
Thank you. Next, we have Laura Jean Conklin. Oh, I think we lost them. Oh, here we go.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Laura Jean Conklin, and I live at 235 West Rocks Road. We've lived here for nearly 36 years and are absolutely opposed to the church's request to remove the special conditions. We moved here in 1990, fully aware that we were moving across the street from a church, but not aware of the festival until it happened. As neighbors of the church, we have supported their 4-day annual fundraising festival with rides, traffic, and loud music, as well as other events, including setting off fireworks at midnight yearly to celebrate Easter. We are not contending or, stopping what the church is doing religiously. We're not asking them to not worship. We accepted all these events because they were once a year, and we thought it was the right thing to do. But along with these events, we have tolerated trash on our lawns, people on our brick wall and lawn, vomit on our sidewalks, and cars parked right up to our driveway, making it very dangerous for us to even leave our house. We have experienced many incidences of non-compliance. We've called the police to complain about these issues time after time without any change in the behavior of the church. One neighbor recently actually went over to the church at night and was told to get lost because we're having a party. Creating an event space to be rented beyond the church community will most certainly have a negative impact on the quality of life of the neighborhood. I'm under the impression that Norwalk has approved new sound ordinances. These ordinances are enforced now by the police and health department, and with some of the guidelines as follows. If an investigator using their unaided hearing faculties of normal acuity is within a set distance and can detect any sound, it will be considered a violation. If the sound is above 45 decibels at 8 p.m., it is a violation. And for an example, 45 decibels is a library setting or a quiet home. We, as residents of Norwalk living in a residential area, are entitled to a peaceful night by 8 p.m. It is recognized that people have a right to and should be ensured an environment free from excessive sound and vibrations that may jeopardize our health, safety, welfare, or degrade the quality of life. Permitting the church to rent its space to external groups would significantly degrade the quality of life for nearby residents, as well as our property values. Moreover, the proposal would violate the Norwalk's new sound ordinances. As residents and taxpayers living in this residential area, we would hope that the city will uphold our rights to peaceful enjoyment of our property and protection. We moved across the street from a house of worship, and we're fine with that. What we do not want is for potentially to be living across the street from one of the largest public venues in the area. We strongly oppose this, and we hope that this city will reject it as well. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Winthrop Baum.
Mr. Baum, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Yeah, you have to unmute.
Unmute. Okay, I got it. Okay, unmute again.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry. I apologize for that.
No
I'm
worries.
Winthrop Baum. I'm at 25 Van Zandt Street in Norwalk. I have several properties in town. I'm a lifetime resident and businessman in town. I'd like to speak to the unfairness of the proposal that this facility, this church, not the church, but the hall that they're presenting is patently unfair. In my property holdings, I have 2 event spaces in my property, and we're a for-profit organization. We pay taxes, property taxes, and come July, I'm expecting a bill upwards of $300,000 just in property taxes. I don't believe the church pays property taxes. I don't know that for sure, but I assume that's the case. I've noticed that there's been some activity there that has caused cease and desist orders to be issued twice. This is just inconsistent with the functioning of a proper church. The application is not valid for a as a for-profit enterprise operating in a residential zone. I think the application is lacking candor. The application itself is rather inaccurate. And I think, as we've heard from testimony of nearby neighbors, it's inconsistent. The application is inconsistent. Does not reflect reality. I'm a witness. I was a guest at the Chamber of Commerce event held in this facility on December 17th with a barely functioning, if at all, kitchen. The dinner we enjoyed there was incomplete and served cold. So I'm not sure what their kitchen facilities are like, but I believe inspections have been made. I welcome questions on my submission for the commissioners submitted on April 20th. Multi-page document, including photographic evidence as well. If any of the commissioners have questions on my application, I would welcome them to be presented to me now. I would refer to the Department of Consumer Protection and the Liquor Commission as this is a commercial enterprise. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Stephanie Mancini.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for for calling on me and for the opportunity to speak. My name is Stephanie Mancini Stevenson. I live at 233 West Rocks Road. I've been here for the last 16 years with my husband and my family. I had prepared a few remarks tonight, different from the letter that I sent. But upon hearing Mr. Bernheim's presentation, I actually have a couple of other specific things that I'd like to include. I'd like to first say, we love living in this neighborhood. We moved here knowing the church was here. And while I'm not of Greek heritage, I have lived in the Greek world and studied the language and culture and customs and traditions and highly respect all of those things and the endeavors of the church to do good work and to continue worshiping and to expand their cultural traditions to their community. The construction of the community center And the idea that it will be used for outside events hosting up to 581 people is actually quite astounding to me as a neighbor. We enjoy, my family and I and my children, we enjoy the festival every year. It's a couple hundred people at a time, probably, with loud music and chaos on the streets. Parked cars on the streets, we have to put caution tape on our property and be careful when we're coming in and out of the driveway. And so we honor those traditions, we participate in them, and we support them. The idea of having, I think Mr. Bernheim didn't have the exact number, but about 157 parking spaces that could potentially accommodate 581 people in the building. I don't see how those cars don't spill onto the streets and cause that kind of traffic, potentially 7 nights a week until 10:30 p.m. This is a residential neighborhood, even though we're close to Main Avenue. We are entitled to live in a residential neighborhood and have all those aspects respected. The private security, I would hope they would be able to help control when the party leaves that community center and they're hanging out in the parking lot, or they're getting to their cars and they're making noise. But 10:30 at night on a work night, on a school night, is not acceptable in a residential community. The idea that this could be going on potentially 7 days a week is not acceptable in a residential community. Some of the past experiences during the festival, as my neighbors have alluded to, don't leave me with a whole lot of confidence that a private security setup is going to do the job they need to do to make this work. I just don't see how people fit and cars fit, and the noise is controlled, and the noise in the parking lot is controlled, and the traffic is controlled, potentially 7 days a week, 10:30 p.m. Children are sleeping, people have to go to work. It's not the place for this kind of public event space. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is listed as iPhone 80, so I believe you need to hit *6 to speak. Okay, you should be all set now.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is actually Effie Stephanitis, and I've already submitted a letter to Mr. Kleppen, but I've been on line listening and through the Zoom meeting since the beginning, and I just actually want to.
Do you mind sharing your address before you begin?
Oh, sure. Yes, of course. I'm a longtime resident, born and raised in Norwalk, on 79 Seaview Avenue in Norwalk, Connecticut.
Thank you.
I was actually baptized in the original church located on 4 Point Street in Norwalk over 50 years ago. And I'm also a parish council member, and I am the direct point of contact for booking the events at the church right now, and have been doing this in a volunteer capacity for about 2 or 3 years now. I just want to, there are some misconceptions, and I just want everyone to know that we respect the neighbors. We're trying so hard to work with the neighbors. Have we made mistakes along the way? Yes. We're new to this. We have a very large venue that we're trying to make good for the, Norwalk use and for our parishioners. And we're still, we're getting our feet wet, and we're trying to navigate it in a way that we believe was lawful and we believed was respectful. And so we're here now today, and we're open to rectifying any mistakes and correcting the issues with the neighbors. And we are making great strides to do that. Our attorney today presented along with all of his other comments, many of the proposed, corrections that we have we are working currently with. But I just wanted to state for the record that the misconceptions are that we don't host a party a day. We don't even host 30 a year. And so I just want the neighbors to know this, because it's kind of making it seem that we're having rowdy events. We're extremely selective in what we book and who we book. We have a gorgeous, beautiful, classy, elegant venue. And we are very selective in who we bring into the church. We have added security cameras at our own cost, both inside, outside. Every single volunteer member that is booking for this event space has access to the app. I am up until 10, 11 o'clock on any given night that I have made a personal booking, watching and listening. Highly involved in the entire booking process from beginning to end. Aside from that, I just wanted to point out that, some of the events that are being booked that people think are rowdy, we are now hiring a professional security outfit that is making sure that all the doors stay closed, that windows remain closed, that people are not allowed to go in and out or loiter in the parking lot. As you heard before, we do have ample parking spaces. I have never booked an event past fire marshal capacity. My events are up to 200 people. We have definitely never booked an event upwards of 400 and 581 people, as some people here have said tonight. That is not something that we can even handle. And so we don't look to book those types of events. I have booked events for schools. We have booked events for karate organizations and local schools in this area. We have booked bar mitzvahs. We have booked baptisms, weddings. I mean, these are family-oriented events, hardworking families that can't afford the, higher and pricier venues in Norwalk and the surrounding areas. Some people work 2 and 3 jobs in advance of a quinceañera for their 15-year-old daughter because it's a rite of passage, as has our bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. And, some of these people wait their whole lives to see their daughters look like a princess that day. And they just want to have a quiet family celebration. They do have music. We are making sure to cap the music now. Our events are ending between 10 and 11 p.m. Security is pulling the plug. DJs know that the music must be turned off. And we're willing to work with zoning and all the surrounding neighbors to come up with something, a plan that will allow us to continue in this manner. I'm trying hard here to just clear up some of the misconceptions. But, at the end of the day, I think that what everybody needs to know is, including these neighbors, is that we're already permitted to have these parties for members. And so the only issue in my eyes before the zoning board is whether the church may obtain the modification on the existing permit to allow the non-members to rent the same venue for events. And that just raises a simple logical question. What is the meaningful difference between an event hosted by a member and one hosted by a non-member? An event is an event regardless of who books it, and the scale, capacity, and the regulations would remain exactly the same. So let's try to work out the regulation and agree to a fair and resolution of the matter. And I thank everyone for listening. Sorry, it's taking a little bit long. But, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beverly Wright.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Beverly Wright. I live at 1C River Road in Norwalk. And thank you.
Oh, we lost Beverly. Hi,
Sorry,
Beverly. Do you mind starting again?
Yes, no, I don't mind. Beverly Wright, 1C River Road in Norwalk. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. And I have a lot of sympathy for both sides of the argument that you've heard, so I won't weigh in on one or the other. But I did want to emphasize something that I think will help both sides, and that's the new noise ordinance. perhaps some of the confusion tonight was because the application, as far as I read it, referred to the old noise ordinance, I think. And the presentation did as well, at least in one element of it. And there's a big difference between the amount of noise that you can generate between the two, the new and the old. I don't know the Norwalk regulations, but I think that zoning abides by or incorporates within its approvals the existing noise ordinance at the time. And if that's the case, some of the callers will be protected, I think, if the new noise ordinance is adhered to. But the application refers to, I think I'm correct, the old noise ordinance, which allowed much higher levels of noise. So that's my comment to you, planning and zoning, that if you could ask Attorney Bernheim to adjust, if that's necessary, the application and tonight's presentation to adhere to whichever noise ordinance planning and zoning is going to require be adhered to, that will help, I think. So if it's the new noise ordinance, some of the verbiage in the application and in tonight's presentation, I think would be moot and shouldn't be there. But if the old noise ordinance for some reason that I'm not familiar with would apply, then that should be cleared up for the entire community, I think, plus the applicant themselves. So thank you. And I really appreciate what you guys do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure. And just for the record, they're bound by the current noise ordinance. Next up is Richard.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kleppen, Chairman Bryce, Vice Chair Wells. My name is Richard Rowena. I live at 6 Bain Street in Norwalk, directly across the street from the south entrance of the church. I'm going to apologize in advance for using the word they when I refer to the applicant, because I really don't know who's in control and who decides these things. Although listening to Attorney Bernheim tonight, I guess there is a board of elders. I just want to say that when I first came to Norwalk in 1973, I was brand new out of law school then, and I went to work a couple of years later in the Corporation Counsel's office during the Jenny Cave administration. And during that time, I got to know the people that were there. And one of the things that I always found amusing was the signs that were in the zoning enforcement office. 2 of them. One said, "Love thy neighbor," and the other one said, "Thou shalt not create a nuisance." And we have both of those situations here as a problem. I've heard about how hard the church has been working to accommodate the neighbors. So I just want to address that, only because it was raised in the priest's letter to me. And this first started with my communications with Peter Lathoris back in late 2024. In August of 2025, I sent him an email and I told him, as a follow-up to our conversation, that I'd always been a believer in live and let live, but that you guys aren't letting me live. That's what I said. And each time I spoke with Peter, he was going to speak with the elders and see what was going on. This went on for a good year. And on November 9th, 2025 at 1:32 a.m., I sent Steve Kleppen an email indicating that this was my formal complaint against St. George Greek Orthodox Church. That same evening, or morning, I should say, at 1:43 a.m., I sent an email to Peter Kleppen and I said, your church is the worst neighbor ever. And the next morning at 7 o'clock, I sent him an email telling him that he shouldn't worry about the mess in the driveway because the guys with the snow blowers were out there right now, 7 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know what they think they're doing that is accommodating the neighbors. I will say that I was invited by Mr. Kleppen, by Mr. Lathoris to have a meeting with the priest, and I did turn it down because it was after I'd already filed my formal complaint. And I'm not king of the neighborhood. There's nothing I could do at that point to do anything except hope that things would calm down. And they haven't. The last party was on March 29th, and I understand what Attorney Bernheim said, that they had some contractual obligations that they felt they had to honor. So I get that. But it still continued. So there's a couple of other things that I wanted to say that are, kind of technical in nature, I guess. The site plan that was submitted with this application is not up to date. The south side of the property, which is directly across the street from me, now has 10 lined parking spaces and 2 dumpsters. I sent photographs of that with my letter. The dumpsters are never closed. They're not enclosed. And my wife and I are constantly having to pick up litter dropped by both the birds who go into the dumpster and just from the wind. I also sent photographs of the floppy sign and the sandwich board laying on the ground and the other sign hanging on the wall for the daycare center that's been there close to a year. And I just don't see, how they can say with a straight face that they've been addressing the concerns and trying to be considerate with the neighbors. It was interesting to hear the speaker that said that she was in charge of all of the bookings and that there was less than 30 parties a year. That could be maybe for the first year, but certainly not the average for this last 6 months. And as far as the private security firm that they hired, one of the speakers talked about the neighbor that went over and got told to get lost. I just want to elaborate on that a little bit. That was at 12:15 in the morning, and it's my 80-year-old neighbor, Jim Thompson, who lives to the immediate east, went over to ask them to please turn the music down or at least shut the doors. And they told him to get lost. They were having a party. So the private security, to me, is no concession whatsoever. If the commission is inclined to go along with this application, this request for modification, I would hope that you would do something with the hours. 10:30 on the weeknights is ridiculous. And I would also hope that you can forget about the private security and require that they hire a Norwalk police officer with sound equipment and the authority to enforce those regulations. The traffic that we have been talking about is not the usual traffic issues that you would concern yourself with on the board. I'm not looking to ask for a traffic study and what the increase is going to be. The traffic we are talking about is what happens at the end of these parties when 150 cars leave at the same time, and I would have to say 10% of them blast off. And when I say blast off, I mean you could hear it all the way up to the end of the intersection of West Rocks Road or Bain Street. I know that there's been some disrespect to law enforcement for the last couple of years, but I would have to guess that a uniformed police officer is going to have a lot more respect than a private cop. That's for sure. And I would also suspect that it would have some control over the amount of drinking and stuff that's being done, especially when people are leaving. So just a couple other things, and then I'll sign off. Attorney Bernheim and the priest indicated in his letter in the presentation that they're being singled out with this restriction. In the 90s, they didn't have the internet and the tape recordings and that we have right now. Things were done with stenographers, and the guys that wrote the resolutions and the minutes did the best they could with what they remembered. But the permit for St. Matthew's indicates that the new structure that was being built was to be used for church purposes only. And to me, that's not that much different than what the church agreed to. It wasn't a condition that was imposed on them. This is what they offered. They offered the neighbors in exchange for their support. And this is what was granted based on what they requested. So I just don't think that that's a valid argument that they're being singled out. There's no other church that I'm aware of that has the ability legally to have an open event center. So I am really hoping that you're going to deny this application, but if you don't deny it, the conditions have got to be more than what the church is proposing. I listened to the gentleman that spoke on behalf of the church before about the money being needed to continue their charitable operations. But the reality is, for the first time in the history of this church, it's got a gigantic mortgage on it. And nobody told them to build a 21,000 square foot event center. And unfortunately, because of the size of it and the use that was proposed, they had to put a sewer line in, which added a huge expense. And I would question the argument that they're grandfathered in to the old sound code because their permit was from 2006. I am not sure, and I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't think to look this up, when they actually got a CO. But I know that sewer line went in right before West Rocks Road was repaved, and I don't think that was more than 3 years ago. So, and plus the fact that they're asking for an amendment to the special permit, you can make that a condition that they abide by the new code anyway. So I'm asking you to deny it, but if you don't deny it, please put some conditions on it that will make us be able to enjoy our homes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Helen Boyan?
Hi, yes, good evening. Good evening, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Helen Boyan, and I reside at 5 Alrawood Drive in Norwalk. I am a lifelong resident of Norwalk, born, raised, and proud to still call this diverse and beautiful city my home for the past 54 years. I am also deeply connected to the St. George Greek community through my involvement with that church. I served on the parish council for many years, was the Greek school chairperson for over 15 years, and was part of the original community center committee. This has been a long-standing vision that I have personally seen evolve over time. I am here this evening in support of the requested variance. At its core, this request is both reasonable and measured. It reflects a use that is consistent with how other church event spaces operate. As discussed earlier this evening, there has been helpful clarification around the nature and intended use of the facility. We want to work with our neighbors. We want to and do weed out and screen who we rent the hall to. We are simply seeking the ability to make the space available to the broader Norwalk community as a safe, accessible, and reasonably priced option for hosting important life events. Norwalk has changed tremendously over the years. When I was growing up, we had event spaces like Continental Manor, Canongate, Silver Mine Tavern, the Red Barn, and Cobb's Mill Inn, just to name a few. Many of these spaces are no longer available or have evolved beyond what's reasonably accessible for many, many residents. Today, there's a clear gap in affordable local event spaces. What's being proposed helps meet that need. It provides a place for not only our members to come together, but also offers the broader community an option to rent a reasonable, welcoming space for important life events. Importantly, this is not a new or unique concept. Many churches and community institutions offer similar uses as a way to support their operations while continuing to serve their communities. It is a practical and widely accepted model. For us, this has been a long-held vision, a true community center, not just a building, but a place that brings people together in a meaningful and accessible way. For these reasons, I respectfully ask that you consider the reasonableness of this request and the benefit that it will provide to this community. And please vote in favor of this variance. Thank you for your time and for your service to the city of Norwalk.
Thank you.
If there's anybody else who would like to speak, you can use the raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen. If you're dialed in by phone, it is *9. Okay, you can go ahead, whoever that is on the phone. Just have to give us name and address. Just need to unmute.
What's the
*6.
Thank you. *6 to unmute. If you're speaking, we still can't hear you. You'll need to press *6 to unmute on the phone.
Yes, James Thompson at 5 Bain Street.
Wonderful. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to voice opposition to the Greek church proposal. I moved here to this place in 1987, and the track record don't speak for what they're saying. They have done quite the opposite. They have not been good neighbors since the time I've moved here. And they promise one thing and it sounds good. They don't live up to the promises. And Richard just said, I was the neighbor that went over to try to speak with them on numerous times. I've been there. I've talked to the people. They promise you one thing and then they do the opposite. So when the police came, when I went over and complained, the police came, they turned the music down, they closed the windows, when the police left, the music went up. They have total disrespect for the neighborhood. So I am totally against this. I have the years of experience that will speak for itself. So I oppose this mission.
Thank you. Oh, Steve, you're muted.
Thank you. Anybody on a phone, *9 if you wish to speak, or raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen. Going once, going twice, raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen, or *9 if you are by phone. Not seeing anybody, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I'll just take a moment to thank everyone who did come out tonight and those who spoke and submitted letters. Thank you for sharing your perspective and your comments on this application. So with that, Attorney Bernheim, would you like to respond to any of the comments this evening while they're fresh and while we have members of the public who are still here?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do hope that the commission will take the time to read the letters. We did have a lot of letters of support, and I told a lot of folks who wanted to provide their support that they didn't need to come in person and speak in order to try to keep this short so everybody could go home at a reasonable hour, and that their letters were sufficient. So to address some of the concerns, I did do a quick Google search on a couple on the Shorehaven and Shore and Country to check on the fire capacity. Shorehaven actually has, if you use their entire facility, the grill, the deck, and the ballroom, up to almost 500 people, 280 for the ballroom, 110 for the grill, and 100 for the deck. And that Shorehaven Country Club is actually in a CD1L, just like we are. So that's a private event space within a CD1L with live music. Their Shore and Country had 200 in the main ballroom, 60 in the patio, and 50 in the alcove for a total of 310. And they're in a CD1M, which is the zone essentially right next to us on the chart. Again, a residential zone where event space and community centers are not permitted currently under the new regulations. To clarify, the noise ordinance, we certainly expect to be bound by the new noise ordinance, whether it's the new one today or it's one that gets passed in 10 years or 5 years or 6 months. Whatever the applicable noise ordinance is, that's what we expect to have to comply with. One member of the public, Mr. Baum, said that he didn't consider us a not-for-profit. I wanted to nip that in the bud. We are a church. We are a not-for-profit organization. And even if we rent this facility to non-members, all of the revenue from that would go back into the not-for-profit church enterprise and be used for its mission. And then I think the biggest thing, and we'll certainly take a look at the site plan and certainly want to address the dumpster concern that Mr. Rowena brought up, but several people brought up the private security. And one thing that we had discussed even before tonight was, in lieu of the private security, hiring an off-duty police officer for any of these sorts of outside non-member events that everybody seems to be complaining about, or at least the neighbors seem to be complaining about. So I think we'd accept as a condition of approval that for those sorts of events that we hire an off-duty or police officer. And I think that's especially helpful with the noise ordinance as it relates to the Norwalk Police Department is the organization that's responsible for enforcing the noise ordinance. It's not the zoning commission or the zoning enforcement officer or Steve or Brian, your staff. It's the police department. So if we have off-duty police officers, I think that will help to resolve a lot of these concerns that the neighbors have raised. Even the last gentleman who spoke said that when the police officer came, when he called and complained, that everything got better. As soon as the police officer left, it got worse. Well, if we have off-duty police officers in uniform as our quote-unquote private security for these events, then I think that will help to make it much better and ensure that we're in compliance with the noise ordinance, because they'll have the proper mechanisms to test that and ensure that people are abiding by applicable laws and such. So I think that pretty much sums up all the points I wanted to touch on for the commission. If there's anything that any of the commissioners heard that they want me to address, short of number of events, end times, and things that I need to go back to the church council on. If there's anything that you guys heard that I didn't just touch on, I'm happy to try to address that while it's fresh.
Appreciate that, and I'll add to that if anyone has things that they would like Attorney Bernheim to bring to the board at the church. I think that would be good to give him that list tonight, so that way at our next meeting we can hopefully make a decision. Anna, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
Yes, Attorney Bernheim, thank you. Earlier in your presentation, when I had asked you about the how this happened, I believe you said that the church was not aware that Nikki Glikas was promoting the event space through her event planning company as a private venue, that she would just rent the space as herself. and you guys were not aware, but which really surprised me, and I think I mentioned that. But there was a report from one caller that there was actually a sign up on the property that said Stone Hill, and in one of the letters they showed a shot from, I think, the church website that says our caterer for the St. George Community Hall is Nikki Gleekus Collective. On her Instagram, she started doing this and calling this Stone Hill about 2 years ago, our newest venue. It seems like this is something that the church was involved in and was just doing. What am I missing?
And maybe I misspoke. Certainly they were aware that Nikki was renting it out as part of her business. I think what I was saying was, I'm not so sure they were aware that it was on her website. But at the end of the day, they certainly knew that she wasn't, that she was organizing these parties and using the church hall for those parties. They certainly knew that. I don't remember exactly our conversation or my response to your question. I'm happy to look at the video and come back to you. But it certainly wasn't something that she was doing behind the scenes and that we thought Nikki was having, church party after church party after church party. They knew it was her business. I don't know if they knew if it was on her website. She was pushing it as, I think at one point it may have said that she was the exclusive person there or something of that sort.
It says exclusive caterer of the St. George's Community Center.
I don't know if that's accurate. But a lot of these halls and the such do have exclusive caterers. For example, the Norwalk Art Space, they have an exclusive caterer if you want to have an event there or rent that space out. It's an exclusive caterer that you have to use. They have a deal with them. So that may be accurate.
Yeah, I bring this up both from the perspective of candor or just misunderstandings and trying to get the record clear, and also because this is some of the stuff that makes me feel like what you have been doing and what you would want to, I guess, resume doing really moves more towards that commercial event space than the community center space. And I like the idea of having a more affordable places for people to have their, family celebrations. But I feel like you're going in the wrong direction.
Well, I'll say we're not going in the wrong direction because she doesn't have it on her website anymore and the such. So if we are going to open this up to the public for availability to have a, financially feasible location for their life celebrations, then it's not a commercial enterprise. It's still a not-for-profit. It's just opening it up like the other churches that you mentioned that you saw, like the country clubs that are in the same zones or similar zones that have event space, so on and so forth. So, so I don't think it's going in the wrong direction. What we're trying to do is make sure that the direction we head in after this decision is the right direction with the appropriate conditions. So, and one of the conditions that we proposed was that it wouldn't be marketed on a commercial event planner website. So to the extent we become aware of that, we would force them to take it down.
Luke?
Yeah, question for Steve. This may be entirely irrelevant. You know that I'm not a tax attorney. However, I sit on the board of directors of a number of nonprofits. And when nonprofit organizations do commercial work, they have to pay taxes on that. I don't know whether planning and zoning can or should get involved in that issue, but there may be a tax issue here about the church having to pay taxes on non-church rentals. Beyond that, the church has financial problems. not our responsibility to solve their financial problems. My concern is that if we allow this here, we open it up again to an enormous number of churches, synagogues within the community. And I see real danger in that. And I can tell you, based on what I know now, as of now, that this is not something I can support in any form.
Are there any? Oh, go ahead, Steve.
No, yeah, I mean, I could try to do some follow-up if you wish, but I definitely don't have an answer to your kind of first part of your question about the tax issues.
Yeah. I'll tell you how I know something about this. I sit on an organization which owns a building which was considering renting space commercially. It had always rented to nonprofits. And we were told that if we rented to commercial enterprises, we would have to pay taxes on those earnings. But again, I don't know whether that falls within our purview or not.
Sure. Are there other questions, comments from commissioners, or things that you would like Attorney Bernheim to bring to the church's board?
Mr. Chair, if I can just address the tax issue. I mean, obviously,
Sure.
the church will comply with any tax that's due as a result of if this is rented outside of church operations. So, for what that's worth.
I mean, I definitely think more guidance from the church leadership about like opening hours and like limits on them would be very helpful to consider more fully.
I'm gonna disagree with Harvey on that. We're not taking our guidance from the church. We are making an independent decision based on what we believe is correct and right for the city of Norwalk, rather than from the church council. It's not that we wouldn't be open to what they have to say, but it's not for them to dictate to us what we do. I'm sorry.
I agree.
And go ahead, Harvey. Sorry.
I agree. I mean, I think we could say, input or, perspective, but yeah, the decision is ours.
Yep. Absolutely. Go ahead, Tammy.
Thank you. Mr. Bernheim, in one of the letters, there was conversation about trucks or working vehicles being parked in the parking lot that is in the area the furthest away from the buildings. Is there some member of your church that's storing their commercial vehicle in your parking lot?
Not that I'm aware of, but I certainly can talk to the church council about that, and I'm sure we could put an end to, long-term parking of commercial vehicles on church property.
Okay, and then also there was an issue brought up about some attempted screening and of trees that were some pretty sad looking little shrubs that got sadder and sadder looking. Are you in a position to ask the church to offer some screening? It seems like it was promised in some way, shape, or form. Is that something that the church can perform?
Again, I can talk to the council about that. I can't commit them to any, financial commitments at this point, but I can certainly bring it to the council with these other items and provide feedback at the next meeting.
Thank you.
I shared a similar concern, and Tammy, I see that if through the special permit we can look at screening here as well. If if we so see fit, especially since noise is one of the main concerns here that we've been talking about a lot. So, and trash and other things going on to neighboring properties. One of the items that you guys had raised as part of the proposed conditions was the installation of a compressor. One of the things I'd like the council to consider is not allowing any of the external speakers to be brought in and such, right? The compressors only work on the installed equipment. So I just wanted to flag that as one of the things I saw as a piece of this.
When you say external speakers, you mean on the exterior of the premises, or like bands not bringing in their own PAs and using the house system?
Both, yes. Yep. Right, because the compressors will only work on systems that have the compressors installed. Are there any other items we wish to discuss at this time? So I will ask for a motion. Does anyone want to make a motion on this application? And that can be a continuance or an acceptance or a denial. This is an opportunity to make a motion as see fit.
I think we should have a continuance. I would make the motion to have a continuance.
Okay. Galen, was that a second? Yes? Okay, great. With that, I think we can do that by a show of hands to continue. And that would be continuing to our May 6th, or is it May 13th? Sorry, let me get the right date here. Steve, please keep me honest. Go ahead.
I guess, Mr. Bernheim, do you know if that I think it's about a 2-week time frame, is that adequate to get the responses back?
Yeah, I think so. What I would say is, this is a top priority for them. So we should be able to get together sometime next week, I'm thinking. So May 6th should work. If for some reason it doesn't, I could always coordinate with you and see if we can push it out another week. But I think the May 6th date will be fine.
I think the only reason I might say shoot for May 20th is because if you're going to get us like a written response or something, if you can't do that in time, then I won't have time to review it, and the public won't have time to review it. So it might make sense to push it to the 20th just to give that buffer.
I did just receive text from my group, and they said that we'll be able to meet early next week. So I think the May 6th will work. I don't, the issues that the commission had asked me to go to the council on are not, they're not complicated issues. What time are these going to end? How many are we going to have? That sort of stuff. So I don't think it's going to be a complicated response in my, how I envision it.
So if you can get me something by, I don't know what the date is, but the Wednesday, a week before the meeting, if you can get me something and write like whatever you're going to get me, and then I have a couple days to flip it around and post it and do that.
Sounds good.
Okay. So we'll aim for the May 6th meeting. If things slip due to timeline, we can always continue it from that meeting to the subsequent if we need to. All right.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Of course. Yeah. Can we do a quick show of hands? All those in favor of continuing? All right. That's unanimous. So we will continue to the May 6th meeting. Thank you, everyone, to the public who came out to speak for this application, for all the comments. Thank you, Attorney Bernheim, for your presentation this evening. We look forward to May 6th.
Can I ask Steve one more question? Steve, a number of institutions were given as examples. One church, one synagogue. Could we have staff look into that further to see if they are in non-compliance with our regulations?
Yes, I was at the Harbor Management Commission meeting, so I missed what items were listed. So I'll go back and listen to the recording and have somebody do some research on that for sure.
Thank you.
An email with links.
Yes. As a point for the record, the public hearing is remaining open till our next meeting. That's the continuance. So, all right, we will now move to our next matter, which is another public hearing. It is 2026-03, regulation change for the City of Norwalk, zoning regulation text amendment to Article 4, 6, 7, and 9 regarding fee in lieu of public realm requirements, workforce housing requirements, village district review standards and procedures, encroachment allowances for steps, creation of landscape nursery use, band sign locations, and revisions and/or new definitions of the following terms: dormer, earth processing and contractors material storage yard, landscape nursery, patio, porch, stoop, wet bar, public hearing, report, and recommended action. Steve, are you leading that one? I'm impressed I didn't stumble too much on that.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to sign off.
Okay, thank you, JJ. Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and I'm going to try to find the document based off the agenda, so we'll see how that works. All right. Are you guys seeing the actual text? All right, we did it. Okay. So this is something we talked about a couple different times. Just, you know, kind of just an overarching philosophy that we've been taking on since the regulations were redone 2 years ago is we're making changes and staff supporting changes that are, we found out there are issues with things or things that are universal issues that everybody's going to face. We're not, if they're, we've gotten some other text changes by outside parties, and when we've gone that route, it's been like, all right, well, this is something that you feel is appropriate for your property, so you're going to be the author of that revision, where the ones that we're focusing on are ones that we think, all right, these make sense for the broader community and are problems that we've encountered with the new regulations. So that's kind of just a background on why we've been working on these processes. So the first change that we're going to discuss tonight for the public hearing is this is something that evolved out of the Arts and Cultural Plan that I believe you guys approved a POCD amendment earlier this year. And basically what this does, similar to some other changes you made to the workforce housing program, is if someone has an artist live work unit and they designate that unit as a workforce housing unit, they get a bonus counted towards their workforce unit. There's a requirement in yellow at the bottom. I don't know if we ever came to kind of a consensus on that. Is a potential requirement that at per calendar year that the basically the property owner needs to certify that artist live work unit is being actually occupied by somebody that should be in that unit, if that makes sense. We do that now, as you remember, with the ADUs, so they have to provide us with a form. That was something staff suggested might be something that the commission felt was appropriate. So that's kind of like the overarching pieces to that one. Second one is changes to some of the definitions related to band signs, and I'll blow it up a little bit so I can read it. There's been a couple issues that have popped up with the band signs about where their location can be. And some of it revolves around in the CD3C zone, where you're required to have a 2-story facade, but they actually don't build out the full 2 stories because they don't, it's just the way it lays out. So this relates to where the band sign can go. So we've modified that. And also there was something in the old regulations where somebody on a service station was allowed to put the signage on the canopy over the sometimes they have the coverings or canopies over the pumps themselves. That was kind of prohibited under the new regulations. And we said, that seems like a pretty consistent use with what most gas stations have. So we've recommended including that back into the regulations. There are several new definitions or changes to definitions. Is that cut off on your screen?
It is just a little bit.
All right. I'll
might have to zoom out just a bit.
All right. Let me go back. There we go. That's a little better.
There we go.
Modifying and simplifying the definition of a dormer. And really why we define a dormer is really to control the volume of that space. That's really the intent of that. Because if you think about, you're allowed to build a 2-story, or I should say 2.5-story house. What happens a lot of times is when you get redevelopment, somebody tries to fill up that volume to the greatest extent possible, but just because it's just the square footage is so valuable and it's expensive. So they try to put basically one way to describe it is to put the biggest box they can on the property. So they would fully dormer out the entire roof area. This kind of definition kind of limits what they can do a little bit. And then the plus side of it is it reduces the massing that the neighbors might feel, especially when you're in an area where maybe that's a street full of capes or ranches, and then somebody comes in with a very large house with the full 2.5 stories, filling up the footprint to the extent they can. So we've modified the definition a little bit to make it a little simpler. They're not allowed to occupy more than 50% of the roof area with the dormer. We did remove, there was one requirement that they had to set it in 2 feet. That's really too hard to regulate. And some of the dormers that we're seeing, you couldn't actually construct it. So we felt that was not a good provision to keep in the regulations. Next change is to the existing definition of earth processing and contractor material storage yard. We're removing landscape nursery from that because we're adding in landscape nursery as its own definition and own use. So the regulation would allow a landscape nursery to be within both industrial zones and the CD3C zone. If you can recall the zoning map, the CD3C zones are basically West Ave, Connecticut Ave, and Main Ave. And there are 4 limitations with some subparts regarding where the landscape nurseries can go, under which conditions they can operate, regulating piles and such. But in essence, like a landscape nursery is what you might consider like a nursery. If you want to go buy some flowers or buy a couple trees, they might have some mulch that they sell that's relation to that. They might sell some tools that, just a typical nursery. We didn't really have that defined before, and it kind of got lumped in with some other things. So we felt, it's probably good to define it and then indicate where it could go and under what conditions it can operate. This is the table view showing, get inserted between junkyard and manufacturing and processing boutique. And again, it's permitted as of right in the heavy industrial zone and with limitations in the light industrial zone and the CD3C zone. Next definition is for a patio, because we don't define a patio currently. And the reason why we want to define the patio is really to differentiate it between what somebody might build as a terrace and even what's indicated as a porch below. Just because sometimes patios really, if you think about what a patio is, you might have walk out with some flagstone down there and it's a flat surface. It's just, they're laid into the ground, whereas a terrace might be built up with 6 feet of material, built with retaining walls, might be fully concrete. And that might need to get regulated in terms of its setback, impervious surface coverage, building coverage, etc. Whereas a patio is really a benign area of the property that, it's easily removable, worst case scenario. Next definition is kind of cleaning up.
Sorry, Steve, could I ask about patio, or do you want to go through the whole thing?
We can, no, feel free to go ahead.
Okay, great. I have opinions about this. Having seen patios that are more like terraces that are attached to houses that are lifted in the flood zone, and then that patio is miraculously many, many feet off the ground. And it also takes up impervious space, and I think it should be counted as part of the lot coverage. So I don't know if this definition kind of goes far enough, because I've seen a number of residential properties where it isn't a patio anymore. It's something much greater. So I maybe you can help define that.
Sure. And I can circle back after I'd have to switch screens, but I pull up the definitions. I believe there's a definition of terrace, I think, that would speak to what you were talking about. So basically, what the patio definitions says, which I think is hopefully fairly simple, it's really meant to be like you walk out of your, back slider, there's the grade of the property that's there, and then those are flagstones laid in, and the grade of the patio area is very similar to the grade of what your lawn might be. I think that's probably the easiest way to visualize it. Whereas like a terrace, it's going to be elevated and it's going to have probably a retaining wall, or it's going to be mounded up several feet or, a foot or two, and it's on a different elevation than the ground around it. If that makes
Okay, good. And so people, I think you just want to make sure that people are not pushing the limit of the word patio when they lift a property elevated in the flood zone. Do you see?
Yeah, and there's always going to be, nuances to this where it's going to be a judgment call whether something might be a patio or a terrace, because not every one of them is going to be built exactly the same. But I think that's where we'd have to say, all right, sorry, in our estimation, that is not a patio, that is a structure, and it's going to count towards setback, it's going to count towards coverage. And at that point, we'd be in just arguing with whoever we were arguing with.
Okay, well, I know people love to argue about these things and push it to the limit. So I would like to see language, if possible, that really brings that to the attention. So somebody subtly doesn't have their patio raised 6 feet off the ground and it's blocking somebody's view and also impacting the lot coverage in smaller lots in the flood zone.
Yeah, so as soon as we're kind of done walking through these, and before you take any action, I'll look at the definitions just to make sure that I'm correct, but I'll do that as soon as I wrap up.
Thank you.
I did pull up side by side what you were saying is what I read, but yes, we can come back to it a little bit later. I don't want to derail. Yeah.
It says at grade, so it couldn't be 6 feet off the ground if it wouldn't be at grade anymore.
Right.
So I mean, someone says at the patio 6 feet off the ground, you say nonsense. No, it isn't.
The no structural.
Well, Galen, maybe that's a good idea. You put the word at grade in
it's in there. It's right in there. And an improved area located at grade with no structural supports, such as retaining walls or roof.
Okay. I hope people obey it. That's all.
Well, yeah, we might be out of work if people obeyed everything, I think. Next one is porch. So the existing language really talks about porches in terms of a frontage type, but it's in the other areas of the regulations it's kind of referred to, but it's not really defined. So this is just providing a definition to what a porch is, kind of, like a classic front porch where somebody might have a roof overhang. It's not enclosed, it's open to the air. So just providing a definition on that, making it consistent with the allowances and encroachments, which are outlined below. Very similar to the porch, and maybe I'll leave them, is this stoop definition. Adding that in there because you can see from the existing table 4310, it kind of already sort of defined or indicated that there was a definition of a porch and a stoop, but this way now it's consistent. We've laid that out, and I don't think there's any inconsistency anymore. Last definition to deal with is a new definition of a wet bar. And this will feed into one of your new agenda items later on. Wet bars are pretty common in a lot of houses, but then the question is, what's the difference between a wet bar and a kitchen? Because the regulations, our interpretation is, and the ZBA affirms, you're really only supposed to have one kitchen within a house, but we understand that some people have, larger houses. They might have a den area that's finished or a basement that's finished, and they want to have some ability to do entertaining down there without necessarily having to go up a flight or two of stairs every time to get something. So this allows a wet bar, defines how big it can be. and some of the parameters around that. So it basically can't have any, permanently installed cooking facilities. We have zero ability to regulate if somebody goes out and buys a microwave and puts it down there. It's just not what our job is to do, but it just kind of indicates, all right, it's not supposed to have a full-on kitchen. You can do a small refrigerator with that. It can have a sink, but it's not really meant to be a second kitchen. This was a regulation that was relevant to the item on East Avenue you talked about earlier. Because that project on the scale of things is pretty small, and you're like, all right, why are we actually seeing this project? Because it's not a big development, it's not really a big change in use, but it is within an existing village district. So right now, the only mechanism that someone can seek approval to go through the peer review process for the exterior design is via a site plan application. And it doesn't make sense for what they're doing to have to do a new traffic study, to get all new site plans and go through all the notification processes if they're just doing exterior facade changes to the building. So this regulation would authorize the commission to allow that peer review process to take place. And once that report is done and you're satisfied with that, then they could just get their zoning permit to complete the work and move on with the improvements. And before I go to the actual resolution, well, I believe you have, so it is a public hearing. So
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, if you want to take comments, and in the interim, I can pull up the definition myself, try to multitask.
Sure. While Steve's working on multitasking, does anyone have to add more multitasking? Does anybody else have questions for Steve or anything that you'd like to bring up?
Steve, how come you don't have a definition for a terrace?
I'm looking to, I thought we did.
There is, hopefully he'll be able to pull it up in a second. I did look it up when he was talking about it before. It says, what I see is it's an elevated roofless structure that may be improved with retaining walls and may contain structural supports such as footings, and that is attached to a building. Hopefully I read that clear enough, but it seems to be. Go ahead. Good.
Yeah, it took me a sec. Can you read that, or would you like me to blow it up a little bit?
It looks good to me. There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, so we did. I didn't include that in the memo. I apologize. I would have made it a little clear that we do have that definition. So I think that's what separates it to Ms. Langalis's points that she was bringing up, is that, all right, we're going to now say, because before I think the argument someone could make or was making that was, oh, this is just a patio and it doesn't count. We're going to say, no, this is a terrace. That's a patio. This counts. That doesn't count.
Any other questions or comments for Steve before we open up public comment? All right. So we will move to the public comment portion of this public hearing. As stated earlier tonight, there is only one opportunity to speak. While there is no limit on how long you may speak, we ask that you're concise. That ensures that your points are clear and that others have time to speak. This portion is not a dialogue, but Steve will respond after all comments. We ask that you're polite and that you start with your name and address.
Diane Cece.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Diane Cece, Olmsted Place, and most of what I'm going to comment on, I will put under East Norwalk Neighborhood Association, since it will apply to both. And also, I just want to ask too, I'm not sure how staff manages this, but a lot of times, for myself and the public, when we ask a question or need clarification and you go through the response, or the applicant goes through a rebuttal, they miss addressing some of the points. Unfortunately, you can't see or hear us at that point. that something wasn't addressed, and I think it's almost always inadvertently and not deliberately. And I think that's unfortunate that we don't have a mechanism to say you forgot something. So hopefully, if someone writes something down and kind of checklist the way we used to do in the old days before Zoom. Anyway, I want to make some comments on a few of these items here. I guess we can go in order. I don't know if Steve wants to bring back up his presentation and go in order if it's helpful for the commissioners. And I think I have them in the same order that he did them. Was workforce housing artist work live the first one?
Yes.
I think. Okay. So I had two comments there. I probably in your prior meetings, but I missed it, and I didn't have time to go back through minutes. But I'm missing the rationale of why we would allot two workforce housing units in consideration for the artist work live instead of just one, and especially as that counts towards the 10%. When the goal is to increase workforce housing. This seems a little counterintuitive to that. So I missed the rationale on it. But my other real question, and I hope the commissioners may have the same concern, is that in the same way that the live unit of the work live would be workforce housing and have to comply with some level of the affordability standards, does the work portion also? Is there a mechanism for this commission through any state authorizing legislation that allows you to dictate that the work portion of it must also be at some affordable level, say 20% less of what the retail or commercial otherwise would have been? Steve, I'll test your memory because mine is shot. I think we talked about this a long time ago, maybe even before TOD and East Avenue, but I wonder if the commissioners have some sense on that. I think that would be a good idea, and that it would be under the same type of restrictions and in perpetuity as the workforce for the work live portion, for the living portion of it.
I'm sorry. Is that are you talking about the rent?
I'm talking about the rent.
Okay.
So there should be a component for the living portion and then the work portion, right? For whatever the live work portion is. Am I taking that too literal? I know you can't have a dialogue, but there's some workspace there that's part of the artist's live workspace, okay? Whatever that workspace is, I think that in consideration, if you're going to give this bonus of counting it as two, in consideration of that, there should be a requirement that space be at some reduced rate. And I know we talked about this a long time ago, but I don't know if that falls in anywhere, and I hope the commissioners would agree with me on that. I think it's a great opportunity for startups and people who otherwise wouldn't have any opportunity to take advantage of having this type of use in our city. I want to make another point here because I felt like at one of the last meetings, the commissioners were looking back at the screen on me like I had three heads here, but where you're requiring a certificate as an affidavit for compliance with some of these regulations. When we were talking about it with the ADUs for an affidavit that A, the owner lives on the property, and B, that they're not doing any short-term rentals on it, I had suggested that instead of just doing it in January, that staff, enforcement staff would be empowered to request that affidavit at any time. So if it was in conjunction with either a complaint or a zoning inspection, for whatever reason, that you could ask them to provide that. And I think the same thing would go here. And wherever you require an affidavit to prove that they're complying. I don't think that's unreasonable. And I hope, again, the commission would agree with me. And I don't think it would be abused. I don't think you'd be infringing on anyone or be unreasonable. I think it would be in conjunction with an enforcement action. The location of the nothing on the ban signs. Although I know Steve won't tell me, but I was wondering if there was a particular applicant that's waiting to come in with that. On the dormer and the new definitions there, On the dormer definition, I totally agree with that in terms of that restriction there with the percentage. I would have liked to have seen a visual just so that I could understand what that is. I mean, it's a moot point now, but I think even for you folks too, it's helpful to see what that would be on a typical building. Under the earth processing and contractors for the landscape, this is one I have a lot of concerns with because within East Norwalk proper, we have a path of light industrial that comes through, like Fort Point and Fitch, and going up that way and down further, going down towards the water. And in each one of those portions where it's light industrial, they also abut and across the street are residential properties as well. So I'm very concerned with this going through where landscape nursery would be allowed in light industrial, where there's no other outdoor activity that would have that amount of outdoor activity and storage and things that could be 20 feet high, but that are contained and have to have dust containment, and possibly that level of delivery trucks in and out, and also a retail component. And I'm concerned about this particularly. I think it should be excluded from light industrial and just maintained with this new definition in the other zones, like the heavier industrial zone. I wanted to point out, it may seem funny, but in the light industrial zone, for those parcels, you don't even allow a tag sale or a garage sale. So to have something of this magnitude, that doesn't make sense there. And I think it should be restricted to the SDHI and the commercial. And again, I'm not sure if this is as a result of a pending application, or if Mr. Kleppen can tell you if there's any pending that's within the SDLI that this would impact. And certainly if there's not, I would say now would be a good time to take that out of there and make it not permitted versus permitted with limitations. On the new definition for patio, I wonder if the definition that you're doing here now, does that change any of the regulations, Steve, with how things are taxed by the tax assessor? And I ask that because it's my understanding from my own house that because our little patio, the little flagstone thing, right as you come up to my door, exceeded a certain amount of square feet, and it can't be that much because it's tiny, that we're actually taxed on it. And I wondered I know you can't answer me, I wonder if you know what that correlation is, and maybe the commissioners are asking the same question, and the good lady, Miss Dallas, may be able to answer that too. And then for porch, is there a difference? I'm asking questions, I know you can't answer me. Is there a difference then between how you define porch and portico? Number one, and number two, this also goes back to tax issues because we're also taxed on our little portico, just a little overhang over that little stoop thingy right there. So I don't know if this is actually the same as a portico or replaces it, or if that needs another definition. And then down in Wet Bar, I actually participated in and spoke at a ZBA hearing last week regarding an application that I think was ultimately this came back to you from for a request for a ground floor kitchen. You may be familiar with it, but staff is certainly familiar with it. And one of my questions was, with the no cooking facilities, would a microwave or toaster be allowed? And I think Steve answered that if it's something that's portable. At one time, I think the ZBA said that they might consider something where you could have a stove, but if you ever sold the house, you'd have to remove the stove, which didn't make that didn't make any sense to me at all. But I would hope that you could have a microwave or a toaster, or, something that would accommodate that. But along those lines, with this whole idea of a kitchen, if we're looking into, we've just gone through a whole lot of work to finally get through something that makes sense to get some ADUs around here. And I think by restricting putting these restrictions on these ground floor kitchens, I'm just always struggling to find out why we're trying to do that. We're trying to have more accommodations for people to live, but not necessarily increase rentals or illegal rentals. And we're paying a lot of lip service to aging in place, as far as I'm concerned. We're really concerned as a city with aging in place. I think this is one of the remedies that you guys can use as a tool to ensure that people who want to stay in their home can stay in their home and have a choice of a top floor or a bottom floor or a live-in that might have a bottom floor with a bathroom and sleeping quarters and a kitchen. I think that's something that's realistic, that should be considered, and we shouldn't be looking to restrict it. Now, I'll give you the flip side of that, especially from ENNA. We certainly don't want to do anything that encourages even more illegal apartments, especially over here. And so this is something that would have to be tightly regulated and regularly inspected, or especially to be able to have those affidavits on demand, for lack of a better term. If you would, consider that. But I definitely think at a minimum, this wet bar was a good solution to start for that other property and for a lot of the other ones. I think the last one is the general village for the village district overlay, which includes the EVTZ zone. I just wanted to point out that the exterior of that, or actually ask a question because I missed the beginning of your meeting. I don't know if that was approved or not. I believe it was approved. And I just wanted to know whether or not the applicant had brought to your attention that ENNA submitted a litany of questions and concerns and suggestions to them that they have not yet responded to, which may be not relevant to the peer review, but I think it's important for you to know. And finally, I'm not allowed to comment on the commercial fee legislation or the city fees. That's a discussion item. Would you correct?
It's our next public hearing, but I'm unsure whether or not we'll hear that tonight. So
Gotcha.
We'll find out after this one.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
I think I covered everything. I know it's late. I thank you for your time. I get one bite at the apple, so I try to get everything in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody else would like to address this, please use the raise your hand function. I am not seeing anybody, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we will close the public participation. Steve, do you mind running through some of the points that were raised there?
Sure, and I took hopefully diligent notes.
On that real quick, I'll address and say that I often do write the checklist that Ms. CC referenced and try to make sure that everything gets followed up. I'm sure things fall through the cracks, but I do my best. But go ahead, Steve.
Sure. So starting at the top, artist live work. The reason why it counts 2 to 1, and you'll recall that there are a couple other instances within the workforce housing regulations where you've allowed for bonuses. One of those is if you do a 3-bedroom unit, you get to count that as 2 workforce units. And a 2-bedroom unit counts as 1.5. And those specifically were recommendations. Well, one of them, the latter one, the 2-bedroom unit one, was a recommendation of the affordable housing plan that we did a year and a half ago. And that with the 3-bedroom unit was ways to incentivize and encourage larger units within those developments, because that was identified in those studies as needs. Similarly, with the artist live work units, those were identified as a need because, as I believe Ms. Cece mentioned, that sometimes it's hard for the folks that are, the starving artists to find housing, especially housing in an environment where they can actually apply their craft as well. So that was the reason to do that. And I think the regulation addresses her other concern that she raised about the affordability of the unit. So those workforce artist live work units would be rented at a lower rate. So I don't think that they would pay two rents, like one for the commercial aspect and one to live there. I think it would just be they pay rent and they have to comply with the workforce housing calculations in terms of the cost per unit. But it's just that that unit is specifically set up and designed and intended for somebody that is an artist. So that's the issue behind that. Last thing that's sort of related to that was about the affidavits and requiring the affidavits at any time. I don't know if there needs to be any change there, because if you have, say you have an ADU or somebody's renting out something as an ADU, we would look to see if that property is on our list of approved ADUs and they are filing their required affidavits. And if not, they would be in violation of the regulations at that point if they had not filed it. If they were just delinquent in filing it and the ADU is approved, then we would just catch them up on the paperwork at that point. I don't know if there's anything additional needed for that issue. I was able to find, let me share screen for a quick sec to give you guys a visual in case there's any confusion at all. This is a pretty good example. The picture on the right here, the larger one, that's a detached garage, pretty big one. But you can see that dormer there, that occupies probably 80% of that roof plane. So 50% would be, much smaller. So maybe this picture down here where these three little, they're called doghouse dormers, maybe that's 50% of that roof plane. But the 50% is really the measurement from this point to this point. So say that's 30 feet wide. The dormer couldn't be wider than 15 feet, if that makes sense. Next item was about the landscape nursery. There already is a landscape nursery that was approved under the old regulations, actually in the LI zone at Norden, which is basically a nursery. Lots of towns, and I've seen it in Stanford, I think there might even be one in Norwalk. There are nurseries in residential zones. There's some in New Canaan too. You go, in my town's got a bunch of them in residential zones. They don't look like, much different kind of setting than like a Home Depot lot with just a bunch of trees planted on it. It looks like, sometimes almost looks like a forested area where you go around and look at trees and look at plants and shrubs. And they do sell incidental things. The limitations do kind of tamper down what they can do, differentiating it from like what you might think of the typical contractor yard where they have piles everywhere with tarps and blowing dust. This is really meant to be like more as an adjunct and accessory use to the nursery piece itself. So I think there's a pretty clear distinction that we tried to lay out with the two uses there. I don't have an answer about the taxes related to patios. The assessor's not using our definitions as basis for their determination. They're going out and doing their own visits and on their own measurements and saying, all right, per our code, we're taxing you at X per square feet of this based on what type of improvement it is on your property. They're not saying, they look at the zoning permits and the building permits when they come in as a basis, but they make their own determinations based on their own calculations, not what we do. Porch and portico would be the same kind of thing in our definitions of portico. Porticos, I know, is different than a porch, but the reason for the change is that there are encroachment standards within the regulations dealing with porches. And obviously a portico is going to be smaller than a porch, so it would still be bound by those same restrictions. I don't think there's any comment I need to make about the wet bar definition at all. I think it helps to differentiate between what a kitchen is and a wet bar and what a dwelling unit in an apartment is. I think it draws distinctions and will make it clear for the public and for staff to regulate. I think that's it. And just to answer Miss Cece's other question, the East Avenue one was just approved for peer review. They did not approve the actual design or layout or anything. That'll come at a subsequent meeting. And I think that's the items, unless Mr. Bryce, you got ones that I missed.
Nope, that's what I captured as well. On the two kitchens piece, I think Ms. Cece did a good job of capturing the two sides of the issue there, and I think that's something we can consider a bit more. I don't know that with what's proposed tonight, we're going to be able to dissect that too much here, given that we just have the wet bar definition as what was noticed out and such. Does anyone have comments or questions for Steve or about the proposed amendment? All right, is there a motion for this amendment? Okay, Galen has moved. Is that a move to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Lou is a second. Great. Steve, do you mind bringing up the resolution?
Yeah, give me 1 sec.
Yep.
All right.
While he's doing that, does anyone have any adjustments to language that they'd like to suggest?
It's the Zoom downfalls when you have too many windows open and you don't know where you were.
While he's finding the window, oh, here we go.
Does anybody need that blown up, or is that okay?
No, this
That's
looks
good.
good to me.
Okay.
You
It's
okay
fairly
with that,
simple.
Lou?
All right. Is there any discussion or modifications to this resolution?
Oh, may I make a request that I did not update
Yes.
the effective date, which is already passed?
What would you propose, Steve, as the effective date?
If somebody can help me out with a calendar, so
Sure.
it would be a week from this coming Friday is what we typically do. So
May 1st.
May 1st.
Would be not this, but next Friday. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Galen and Lou, are you okay with that amendment to the resolution?
Certainly.
Great. All right. Let's do this by roll call since it's a text amendment.
Certainly. Ms. Tabachnik? That's a thumbs up, I guess. Mr. Schulman?
Yes.
Ms. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Lingalis?
Yes.
Mr. Hubers?
Yes.
Ms. Lankowski?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And Mr. Bryce?
Yes.
Okay, unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you. So our next item is related to the fee schedule. Unless anyone objects, I would like to suggest we push this to our May 6th meeting. Steve, is this something that you need approved in this month, or is this something we can move?
No, that's fine. If you
Okay.
could indulge me on the discussion item so I could move that one along.
That's where my mind was at as well, if that's okay. So I'm going to open this one so we don't have to notice it again, and then we can continue. So 2026-32 revisions, City of Norwalk revisions to the fee schedule, public hearing report, and recommended action. I would like a motion to continue.
Moved.
Thank you. Lou, is there a second? And we'll do this with a show of hands, all in favor. All right, that's unanimous and move to our May 6th meeting. Thank you. We'll now move to discussion of raised Senate Bill 363, commercial vacancy taxes discussion. Steve, do you have an item for us to review here?
Sure, and I hope you had a chance to read it. I was getting clearance and approval to send the letter out to you. I have it up on the screen now. And just for background, in case someone missed a meeting or wasn't, current on that, there's some pending legislation regarding the ability for municipalities to tax vacant commercial spaces, which I know the commission has brought up, and the city, it's popped up other places too. The public's aware of it, and and they bring that up. And there are various reasons why, and I think it also varies by the area of the city, why that is. Some places with the new developments, I think there's been issues with, not having enough supportive people around for the businesses. There's been others where I think it's just been ineffective management on that. I think other places, it's been that there's been tax reasons why they've chosen not to do so. And other places that the potentially the rent they're seeking for the spaces is just out of whack for, what's realistic. I've heard lots of different reasons why. I don't know if necessarily there's one reason, but there really has never been a recourse for the municipality to do anything about that. So this legislation, I think, is an attempt to fix that. So I think the letter itself is pretty benign in terms of the background and why the commission feels that the language is a good idea. I went through it, and Brian and I were chatting about it, and then we bounced some ideas off of Corporation Counsel. I think that there could be a simple fix or two potential fixes to their existing text, because the way there's a clause in there that reads that it can't be applied to residential. But I think the way they wrote it is, or could be interpreted that if you have a building that has residential, then it's not applicable. And I don't think that was the intent. I was thinking the intent was, all right, you have this mixed use development, and maybe there's a 5-story building and the ground floor has got, whether it's retail or restaurant or whatever, and that's vacant, but the upper stories could be completely filled and they're not filling the ground floor for whatever reason. But the language wasn't clear whether that building would be, you'd have the ability to tax that or not. So we've put together just two simple little clarification fixes that we would suggest that the legislators consider if they vote on the bill. And assuming that this, gets your blessing, we'll send that out and work with through the mayor's office, work with our with the council and delegation to get some, broadband kind of acceptance and hopefully just information on the bill itself.
So Steve, do you have an update on what the status of the bill is?
I don't know when it's coming up for a vote. I don't think it's occurred yet, but my goal is, if you guys say yes, I'll, it looks like I didn't send anything, but I played around with it a little bit. There's a portal for providing comments and it looked pretty simple. So hopefully it's as simple as I think, and I'll upload the letter tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, you can written testimony, but you could also, Steve, give oral testimony on Zoom.
Yeah, I was going to stick with the written.
That'd be worth doing.
Okay.
I think.
Steve, can I also suggest that we send it out to all of our state legislators?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Anna?
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed the full discussion last time and I'm very sleepy. But how would this work? It says the assessment is on the property. How would this work with a property like Cemetery Street, where the first floor, like it's one building, the first floor has residential units and it has commercial units, and at least one is vacant. I don't know if this is going to be like more than 6 months, or if the cities get to decide if there's going to be a time frame, but how would that work with the Cemetery Street, for example?
That is a good question. And when I was going back and forth with with Corporation Counsel, they had that question too. They were curious how it would be administered. So I don't think that piece has been ironed out yet, or been tested to make sure it's, going to fly.
The intention is just to tax the space that's commercial space, not residential.
And the way I'm reading what Steve proposed is that it would only apply to the ground floor space that's not used for residential. So in a cemetery where you have both ground floor residential and commercial residential, it would only apply to the commercial spaces on the ground floor. It wouldn't exempt the whole building just because they have residential. If I'm reading this correct, I'm also tired.
Is that something, can properties be taxed in that way, that it's only a tax on, well, I guess
I see.
It does that with like the main structure versus an additional structure. Like, I'm not a tax person. Like, is that doable?
I
Yeah.
think so.
Okay.
It's been done in other states, apparently.
Yeah, I think the to your question, and that's the same question that Corp Council asked, was like, all right, so am I just taxing them on that 1,000 square feet of ground floor commercial that's vacant, right? You're not
Right.
hitting the whole building, which I think is the intent, but
Right.
maybe that needs a little more massaging.
Well, and likewise, if the whole first floor is commercial and then there's 3 floors, is the tax only on the square feet of commercial space, or is it on the, I mean, I think the intention is that it's on the commercial space, but I think the way this is written, it's not quite clear.
Yeah, I
Or
think
maybe we would have to build that out in ordinance, but
yes, maybe and definitely or no on all. I think you're probably right, though. It would just be, say it's 1,000 square feet of ground floor space and everything else was occupied, they would hit you on the 1,000 square feet once it hit that threshold. And I think it's also a discretionary item too. It's not like you have to do it, but I think it's a stick that the community could have that they currently don't have.
so if it was 1,000 square feet and you're only taxed on the commercial space at $5 a square foot is the max.
Yeah, that's my
5,000, what, annually? It
Uh,
doesn't seem like it would motivate. I mean, I don't know if anything would motivate them to lower the rent or whatever it is, but it's just something to think about, but not at 10:30 at night. I don't care. It's all fine. Why?
Any other comments, discussion, or modifications for this letter?
No, I move that we approve the letter and have the staff send it off.
Is there a second? Great. All those in favor? Great. Perfect. Thank you, Steve, for putting this together and submitting it. Appreciate it. Thank you, Lou, for bringing this to our attention. All right. Our next discussion item is about an amendment introduction. Steve, do you want to briefly touch on that?
Yeah, and I'll go quick considering the hour. And this one, it should go fairly quick because it's not anything kind of earth-shattering here. And both myself and Ms. Cece alluded to this before. There was an appeal in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals a week or two ago where somebody was questioning whether, I can put multiple kitchens in my house. And we're in our opinion, and which is pretty much like, no, that's single family house has a kitchen. But the wording, the regulations, not great. So we're basically just moving the word kitchen to say a kitchen, and then they can do whatever else they want. You can have 6 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, whatever. Same with like living rooms and everything else. But you are restricted to a kitchen within a single family house. Now, if you have an ADU, obviously, then you get a second kitchen. But that's separate.
Do we have a definition of a kitchen? Because my parents have a downstairs full setup. There's just not an oven. They say that's loud, but that's somewhere else.
Yeah, we do have a kitchen definition. Yes.
Okay, I was checking.
Yes. That's a quick one. This is a new one, and there's one older one that you've seen before. And this one, we'll take a couple pictures to you guys to get a little sense of it, I think. We've had this situation pop up. We have the regulations require frontage build out, which basically means, say you have a 100-foot wide piece of property, you have to build on a certain percent of that has to be occupied with building frontage. When you're on a corner lot, that means you have to wrap that building. And in certain zones, there has to be what's called a liner building. And a liner building is basically, it's got to be almost mandating you have to have some kind of active use there or residential or something. And it's got to be 20 feet deep to be, at minimum, to be a liner building. But when you get to, and I'll jump back to the wording in a second, but when you get back to some very skinny lots, that becomes very problematic. So the good example, and this is one that I was, there's somebody that's toying with redeveloping this property, I should say, 145 Water Street. You can see along Concord Street, it's got a lot of frontage, but then is very narrow on Water Street. Our regulations today require that on Water Street, you have to have some kind of active use. It's not one where you can just have a kind of a blank facade and nothing happening. But the regulations also require that that frontage build out occur along Concord Street and that you have to at least put a liner building there. The problem is when you do that and the lot is narrow, and in this example, and I'm measuring off the GIS, so it might be off by a couple of feet, that it's only 66 feet deep. The liner building itself minimum is 20 feet. The parking space, if you wanted to put in, like you can see in this aerial image on the lot next door, there's no building there, but you can see there's straight parking spaces, and an area you drive down the middle. You can't do that over here. You couldn't do that any with it without the building, because you need, the parking stall is 20 feet wide, or excuse me, 20 feet deep. So you have two of those, that's 40 feet. Then you have a drive aisle between them, which is a minimum of, I think, of 22 feet. So you're already over 60 feet. And then if you add the liner building on top of that, you're over 80 feet. So unless you get to 85 feet plus or minus a foot, you cannot add parking in the liner building, and it's going to really hinder any kind of development potential on the property. But when you get above 85 feet, even on those corner lots, it doesn't make a difference. You're like, all right, I can still develop and add the parking underneath and put the city's requirement for the liner building. So we've come up with some text that it might need a little more massaging, but I think it's really close and good enough to advance to a public hearing, after we do our referrals, which basically says, taking the existing regulation, and parking structures refers to that surface parking, it's got to be screened. So, okay, we're not changing that, but we're saying it doesn't have to be screened with a liner building. We're saying on these skinny lots, you can screen that parking with basically the building facade. So that was done on 121 Water Street. Our regulation would be a little more, I'd say, successful in terms of hiding the parking. But basically, the idea would be the wall of the building would look, it would look just like the wall of the building was continued, but behind there would be parking and it wouldn't be visible. That's really kind of what it's saying. But it's saying you can't do that on certain streets that we want that street level activation, which are the streets defined as the Main Street typology, or Water Street, or Belden Ave, or Commerce Street. And those street designs are laid out in the Complete Streets Design Guidelines. And this is only applicable, I should state from the beginning, only applicable in the CD4 zone. So it's not applicable in any of the other zones. So I'm hoping it wasn't too much of a convoluted explanation of what we're talking about. Okay, I got one more, and then we're done. And this one is one you've seen before and was initially in the amendment packet that you had originally considered, but there were a couple of questions about the downtown special fund for this that we got cleared up. Stop. And also somebody made a suggestion that we not tie it to density, but tie it to the lot area. And after thinking about that, we're like, yeah, that actually makes more sense. So the regulations now require public realm in certain developments, and the existing text is up at the top of the screen. So basically what it's saying is within the one exemption now from the public realm is if you're in the CD4 zone and you're doing a development that's got less than 10 units, or it's a historic structure, it's exempt from the public realm requirement, or within the CD3C zone, which is that Westport Ave, Connecticut Ave, Main Ave, and you're doing a multifamily mixed-use development and you have less than 29 units, then that would also be exempt from the public realm. So we thought about that a little bit more, thinking of a better way to do that. And so the revised recommendation is within the CD3C zone, again, that's Westport Ave, Connecticut Ave, and Main Ave, if you have a lot or a building site and it's less than 50,000 square feet in lot area, and that's just a little bit over an acre. And we think that that's probably a good good measure of a development or site size that you might want to have that public realm included in there, whether it's mixed use, whether it's just commercial, but I think that's a good size. And then within the CD4 zone, we went down, instead of having it at the density of 10, we looked at 10,000 square feet, which is a little less than a quarter of an acre. They still have to provide the fee, but they're not putting in that public realm space. And there are some caveats on that. They have to be within 500 feet. And I'll show you the map again, just for so we all recall what that distance looks like. 500 feet of a park and located on a downtown street. Again, and I'll show you what those look like. So we looked at this map before. The map on the left is 1,000-foot radius, and this is basically to orientate you. Here on the left is the train station here. This is, oh God, I'm blanking on the park. Here's 19 Day, I'm remembering that. Day Street here and the new park that was put in. So somebody's got the name for it.
Ryan Park.
Thank you. So this is 1,000-foot radius from the park, and you can see what that encompasses. That's a really big area. That's a lot bigger walk shed for somebody to do. And here's 500 feet from Ryan Park. And this makes more sense. I think 500 feet is probably just a better number to give you a sense of the type of streets. So the downtown street would be ones where you would be exempt. So if you're in one of these light blue streets here, you could potentially be exempt from the public realm requirement. However, if you're on Water Street, for example, or South Main, then you're not exempt from that. On those kind of streets, we want to see that public realm requirement remain based on the type of development is likely to see there. So that's the three that we're recommending the commission consider. You don't need to, obviously not voting on anything tonight. We have to do referrals. There's time to think about it some more, make tweaks or whatever, but we'd like to at least get the referral process so we can have a public hearing at a future date.
Great. Any concerns with staff putting out the referrals? Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
All right. Next up is acceptance of the minutes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes? Thank you, Tammy. Is there a second? Thank you, Harvey. All those in favor, or sorry, any modifications to the minutes? All right. With the show of hands, all those in favor of approving the minutes? All right. And any abstentions? All right. And any opposed? All right. Anna, did you vote in abstention? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I voted yes, but probably should have abstained.
Okay, we'll mark that as an abstention. So 2 abstentions, otherwise carries. Comments of the director?
Nothing further. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Any comments of commissioners? All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Awesome. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.